I broke out of my egg in a dark, warm cave and found out I was a green dragon. My true name came to me on its own, Viridian Asquedributon. When I said it, a flood of old dragon memories filled my head. Tiamat, the ladder of gods, my bloodline, and the name of this world, Variks. I breathed out by accident and green mist came out, eating away a piece of rock. That surprised me. Baby dragons my age should only bite and scratch. My legs were thicker than they should be too. Some kind of mutant. Then a second set of memories woke up from another life. I used to be a walker of abundance, serving a giving star god. I healed people. I helped refugees. Then some powerful lord passed by, and I was wiped out by the leftover force of it, without even a chance to react. A stupid, meaningless death. So now I'm a green dragon, a race that likes lies and rot. A healer turned into a poison lizard. Feels like a joke someone played on me. Was that you? I was hungry, so I ate my own eggshell. Crunchy. Not bad. I learned to walk, tripping over my own tail at first. In a puddle I saw myself. Pale green scales, bright clear eyes, no evil shine at all. I looked more like a metal dragon hatchling than a wicked one. The abundance power didn't change my race, only how I feel. Something is wrong, though. A baby green dragon should have a mother nearby. I'm alone, and there's no trace of any big dragon here. Abandoned? Or did something happen to her? Sleep was pulling at me hard. Before that, I sniffed around the nest and caught a faint, strange smell, not dragon, coming from a crack deep in the cave. It made my new scales tighten. I curled up in a hidden dip in the rock wall, hid myself under broken shell pieces, and closed my eyes. Tomorrow, first thing, find out what that smell is. That was my first decision as the world's first abundance green dragon. I woke up much stronger. My body had grown from pony size to about the size of a full-grown tiger. My life level jumped from 1 to 3, something a normal hatchling needs a whole year to do, and I did it in one sleep. The abundance power in my soul feeds me day and night. Better still, when I reached into my bloodline memory, green dragon spells were just sitting there waiting. With 2 lifetimes of mental training, I learned them fast. Level 3 body plus spells plus dragon talent puts me around level 6 in real fighting power. That's nothing near the Empire's heartlands, but out here on the wild edge it's enough to reach adulthood, if I don't do something stupid like most of my kind. I've died twice already. I'd rather not make it 3. I clawed and breathed through the vines blocking the cave mouth and stepped outside. Wind and leaves, insects, birds. My future land. About 15 minutes down the old path, I smelled a beast. A rock boar the size of a small rhino burst out. Tier 4, 1 step above me, but stupid. The only problem was its stone armor. I didn't wait. I pushed magic through my claws into the ground, and vines shot up and grabbed its legs. It screamed and snapped a few of them, but I was already moving. I kicked off, crossed 20 paces in one leap, and landed on its back. My fangs went into the gap between the stone plates and its skull. Crack. Hot blood. One last squeal, and it went down. Too easy. Seconds, and I never used my breath. Level 6 was a modest guess. Dragons just start higher than most creatures ever climb. I dragged it home, ate my fill, stored the rest under stones in a cold corner, drank at the underground river, and lay down. Meanwhile, not far away, a kobold hunting party found my kill site. The blood, the broken bush, the hoofprints. Their leader smelled something that made him drop to his knees without knowing why. He'd never seen a dragon, but he'd heard of them, and every kobold alive wants a dragon master of his own. Fear first, then excitement. He grabbed a fistful of bloody dirt like treasure and ran back toward the tribe, the rest howling behind him. They had news for their chief and shaman. A dragon has come to this forest. The kobold who found my kill site, his name roughly means the guy who always trips over his own feet, ran faster than he ever had. He burst into camp and showed a clump of my blood-soaked dirt to their chief, Brew, and their sorcerer, Buck. Brew is the biggest kobold in the tribe, with faint green scales on his back from a tiny trace of dragon blood. Buck is thin and weak, but has magic, also from that same thin dragon blood. The moment they smelled the dirt, their bodies reacted on instinct, whimpering, eyes narrowing, total submission. Buck's hands were shaking when he whispered, "A real dragon. For kobolds, following a dragon isn't slavery. It's the only way up." Dragon blood can turn their short-lived race into long-lived dragonkin. The little bit they already have is the only reason Brew became chief and Buck became a sorcerer. But it's not enough. They won't even outlive a normal human. A real dragon nearby changes everything for them. Brew gathered about 15 kobolds, and they came straight for my cave. I already knew they were coming. Before I'd gone to sleep, I had planted a spell seed on a crooked tree 30 steps from the entrance. My abundance power made it sprout in minutes, and I could see through it. So I watched them approach from the dark of my cave. My bloodline memory told me kobolds are the classic dragon servant race, loyal by instinct. But that same memory warned me. Their loyalty can be too eager, and worse, they might already belong to another dragon. If some older dragon owns this forest and these are his servants, showing myself would be suicide. I watched carefully. No trace of another dragon's scent on them. Most likely a wild, masterless tribe. Good, but I still didn't move. I can't fly yet, and even kobolds could be dangerous to a hatchling if they wanted. I needed to play this right, not scare them off, but not seem soft either. I released my dragon pressure, carefully controlled. Not crushing, just heavy enough to make them kneel. Their chief dropped to one knee. The sorcerer followed. The scout flattened himself on the ground with his tail jammed between his legs. Inside the cave, I was not nearly as calm as I looked. 2 lifetimes of experience helped me fine-tune the pressure, but my heart was racing. I said nothing. I let the darkness shift, like a silent breath, and waited for them to show me what they wanted first. Buck, the sorcerer, pressed his forehead to the ground and spoke in dragon tongue. He called himself and the others servants, a word that in dragon language means protection, feeding, and a bond tied to blood. Smart choice of words. He told me his name, introduced his brother Brew the chief, and said their tribe of 317 kobolds wanted to pledge loyalty to me. I liked what I heard, but I wasn't going to show it. A free tribe falling into my lap. 2 lifetimes taught me that free always has a bill attached. Still, I needed followers badly. A hatchling with no servants has to hunt alone, guard his own back, clean his own nest. I stepped out of the cave into the moonlight. They saw me, and they froze, because I'm clearly a hatchling. Too small to be the young adult dragon my pressure had suggested. My wings are still crumpled against my sides. My face still has that round baby dragon look. I could practically hear the calculations going on behind Buck's eyes. But then Brew slammed both knees down, crossed his claws over his chest, the highest kobold oath posture, and said, "Accept our loyalty." Buck had already nudged him. A hatchling is still a real dragon. Better than nothing. I asked why. Buck looked me in the eye for the first time and gave me the honest answer. Their dragon blood is too thin. They won't live past 40. Only a true dragon's bloodline conversion can save them and make their tribe grow stronger. I like that honesty. I pricked my chest with a claw tip. 1 drop of heart blood, darker and hotter than normal blood, nearly black-green under the moon. I pulled 2 scales from my side, 1 big, 1 smaller, and chanted an old dragon tongue spell. The blood split and soaked into each scale, which flashed bright, then cooled into something amber and glassy. I pushed 1 scale to Brew, the other to Buck. "Take it, then swear." Brew pressed his scale to his chest without hesitating. His muscles locked, his back scale stood up, he roared, and the scale melted into him, leaving a dark green mark like an ancient tattoo. Buck's hands shook, but he didn't pause either. The scale sank into his palm, his magic churned, and the murky fire in his eyes burned brighter. They swore together, voices high and low weaving like a rough 2-part song. By blood and soul, we follow the true dragon Viridian, until death. If we betray, let dragon fire burn us. The oath locked into place. I felt 2 thin threads stretch from those scales and wrap around my mind. 1 thought from me, and I could tighten them. As long as my soul stays stronger than theirs, the contract can never be broken from their side. I lay back down on the flat rock at my cave mouth and let my voice relax. Good. From now on, your tribe is under my protection. Brew grinned with a mouth full of crooked fangs. Buck didn't smile, but the fire in his eyes said enough. The rest of the kobolds finally peeled themselves off the ground, slapping leaves and dirt off each other, tails wagging. What none of us noticed, 300 steps away, behind a fern, a gnoll scout was watching everything. It had come to spy on the kobold camp over some stolen mushroom patches. Instead, it saw a dragon. It couldn't read the oath, but it knew what that green shape in the moonlight was and what that smell meant. It crept backward step by step, then turned and vanished into the dark. The gnolls now know the kobolds have a dragon. I spent half the night looking over my new tribe. 317 kobolds crammed into a dip in the ground under a rocky hill, living in a mix of burrows and hide tents. The smell was mushrooms, dung, and kobold all mixed together. Not great, but better than the corpse stink I once knew on a war-torn planet. The loyalty ceremony took a while. Over 300 kobolds lined up, knelt, pressed their foreheads to the dirt, and said their names one by one. No magic contract for the regular ones, just spoken oaths. I forgot most names immediately. I did remember Grak, the scout who found me first, because he smacked his forehead on the ground so hard it echoed. Buck gave me the full rundown of what we have. For level 3 warriors, Grak among them. About 100 level 2 fighters armed with sharpened bone and stone, plus a few rusty iron knives. The other 200 are miners, level 1, but kobolds are natural diggers. They mine iron and grow mushrooms underground. Brew himself is level 4, and Buck is level 3 with some fire magic, rare enough among kobolds to make him second in command. They also told me about a problem. West of here, a gnoll tribe of 200 sits on a salt mine that used to be ours. Their chief, Kook, is a level 4 berserker. He and Brew are evenly matched. Brew once chopped a notch in Kook's axe and sent him packing, so neither side can push the other. A stalemate for over 2 years. But Buck heard rumors that Kook has been trying every desperate trick to break through to level 5. Rituals, beast blood, black oil from deep mines. I know berserkers. The crazier they are, the more likely they'll find a breakthrough or die trying. I rested my chin on my claws and half closed my eyes. My abundance power was still quietly feeding my growth. At this rate, maybe 2 or 3 months to reach level 5. If nothing goes wrong. Something went wrong almost immediately. Under that same moon, Kook swallowed his 3rd barrel of black oil and broke through to level 5. And the gnoll scout who had watched me accept the kobold's oath? He ran straight back and told Kook everything. A small green dragon, wings not even fully open, protecting the kobold tribe. Kook's plan was simple. Kill Brew himself, have his gnolls surround me, then bathe in my dragon blood. Dragon blood would free him from the limits of gnoll bloodline. The legendary gnoll king rank would no longer be out of reach, and every gnoll present would get a taste. 200 gnolls grabbed every weapon they had and marched toward us with torches. I sensed them through my scout seed on the crooked tree, many feet, moving fast, getting closer. Then one of Buck's perimeter scouts crashed into camp, muddy and bleeding from a gash on his arm. He tripped over his own feet 10 steps from me, ate dirt, and screamed. West. Gnolls. All of them. Kook broke through to 5. Brew's face went dark. His rival just passed him while he's still stuck. I didn't stand up. I stayed on my rock and looked at my claws, still hatchling-sized, then looked west into the black forest. Shapes were moving under the trees. A lot of them. Buck, I said, pull your people back 50 steps. Get every miner up from the tunnels. Anyone who can hold a rock, bring them. Buck nodded and started shouting orders. Brew pulled his stone axe from the ground, walked in front of my rock, and faced west. The green scales on his back stood straight up in the firelight. The moon slid behind clouds. The sound of hundreds of feet on dead leaves was getting louder. The gnolls came fast. They killed one of our scouts before we even saw them. Kook cut the poor kobold in half with one swing. Brew stood in the clearing in front of the camp, stone axe ready, scales standing up on his back. Buck was behind him with his staff, saving his magic. Our 4 level 3 warriors and 100 fighters spread out in front, with the miners behind them holding pickaxes and mushroom shovels. Some of them were shaking, but nobody ran. The gnolls poured out of the forest. Their 10 level 3 warriors hit our line first, and everything turned into chaos. Bone hit bone, blades went into flesh, bodies dropped on both sides. Grak took a bone hammer to his left arm. I heard it snap, but he kept fighting one-handed, stabbing his spear through a gnoll's belly. A kobold next to him got his throat cut. Another kobold smashed the killer's skull with a pickaxe. Some died locked together, teeth still in each other's throats. I stayed on my rock. I'm a few months old. Diving into 200 gnolls would be stupid, and I've lived long enough across 3 lives to know the difference between brave and dumb. But I worked from where I was. I pushed magic through the stone into the ground, sending it along roots and rotting leaves. Wherever a kobold was about to die, vines shot up, tripping a gnoll mid-charge, yanking an ankle, grabbing a wrist so a hammer swing went wild. Just enough to give a kobold the opening to stick a blade in. I did it over and over, one save at a time. Then everything went wrong. Cook hit Brew. Brew's axe went flying. A slash ran from his collarbone to his ribs, skin peeled open, blood soaking everything. He tried to stand and couldn't. He tried again and barely got to one knee, bleeding with every breath. But his eyes never left Cook. Cook was glowing. His old scars were lit up dark red under the skin, full berserker rage. Muscles swelling, veins bulging, eyes solid red. He walked past the kneeling Brew without even looking at him and headed for Buck. Buck put everything he had left into one fireball. It hit Cook's shoulder and exploded. Burned fur, blackened skin. Cook didn't even flinch. He smashed Buck's staff in two with one axe and rammed the other handle into Buck's stomach. Buck flew backward, hit the mud, blood pouring from his mouth over the green scale mark on his chest. His eyes were open but going blank. Brew screamed from 10 steps away, spraying blood, trying to get up. His knees gave out again. Cook walked toward Buck to finish him. Nobody left to stop him, so I used my breath. A jet of green mist shot past Cook's nose. He dodged, barely, bending backward at an impossible angle, feet plowing trenches in the mud. Where the breath touched grass, the blades died, sprouted new growth, then rotted again, life and decay flickering back and forth on the same leaf. A few drops hit his chest fur and ate it away to raw red skin. He looked up. I was off the rock now, all 4 feet on the ground, tail sweeping slowly behind me, scales cold bright in the moonlight, wings still crumpled at my sides. Every creature on the field paused for a heartbeat, instinct, deep in the blood, telling them what I am. So you finally came down, Cook said, grinning with a mouth full of blackened fangs. He looked at me the way a predator looks at prey that just stepped into killing range. I didn't answer. I looked past him at the battlefield. Brack's broken arm hung useless, but he was still swinging. 2.5 of our 4 level 3 warriors were down. Miners were dying 3 or 4 for every gnoll they killed. The gnolls had lost at least half their level 3s and plenty of regulars too, bodies piled on bodies. Nobody was retreating. My kobolds wouldn't run because their dragon was watching. Running would be disloyalty, and to a kobold that's worse than death. The gnolls wouldn't run because Cook had promised them dragon blood, and too many had already died to quit now. Cook pulled himself off the tree stump, spun both axes in his hands, eyes solid red. Your dragon heart is mine, he said. Cook charged with no warning. Berserker rage had burned away everything except one thought. Rip open my chest and take my heart. I didn't meet him head on. I measured his speed the instant he moved, twisted sideways, and let his axe scrape across my shoulder scales. Sparks flew. White scratch mark, but nothing broke through. I chanted and sent vines up from the mud to grab his ankles. He chopped them apart in 2 swings. I sent more from the left, then from all sides, not to stop him, just to slow him. He tore through every one. That all you got? He sneered, 15 steps away and closing. I tried wooden spikes next, a row of arm-thick sharpened stakes bursting up from the ground at his chest. He slipped through them like an eel, only picking up a couple of scratches he didn't even feel. 10 steps. I pulled back and cast a 3rd spell. A faint green glow leaked from between my scales and spread outward into every plant around me. Life drain. The grass turned yellow. A thin stream of life force flowed back under my scales. Not a lot, but enough to keep topping off my stamina and magic. At 3 steps I stopped retreating and swung my tail with everything I had. Pure muscle, pure dragon body. The hit launched Cook off his feet, 3 feet in the air, 1.5 spins, and slammed his back into an old tree. Leaves rained down. One axe flew from his hand and stuck in the mud. He got up. Ribs caved in on the left side, blood in every breath. And he was laughing, an ugly sound worse than crying. Yes, that's more like it. That's what a dragon should be. Then he pulled out a little wooden bottle from his belt, black oil, the same stuff that pushed him to level 5. He bit the cork off and drank every last drop. His spine started popping. Muscles swelled, bones cracked and stretched, Old scars split open, leaking red light. He threw away his remaining axe, dropped to all fours, and stopped looking like a gnoll person. He looked like a giant starving wolf. He hit me almost twice as fast as before. I barely got my front claws up to guard my throat before he crashed into me. His fangs locked onto my left forearm, and the impact flipped me over. We rolled through the mud. I ripped a gash across his belly with my right claw. He didn't even glance at it. His teeth came for my neck, aiming at the thin gap between shoulder and throat scales, one of the few spots small teeth can actually pierce a dragon. I jerked my head aside. His fangs skidded along, leaving 3 shallow grooves in my neck. Green-black blood seeped out. I barked out a quick spell. Vines caught his hind legs and hauled backward. They only held for a second before snapping, but that second was enough for me to break free and get my 4 feet under me again. No more kiting. He was too fast now. I went close range. Claws against fangs, his claws raking my scales, my claws tearing his hide. Vines kept coming out of the ground, breaking, regrowing, breaking again. Life drain kept running. The grass around us died. The old trees' leaves curled and fell. Every scrap of stolen life fed back into me. I waited. 3 lifetimes of experience told me what to do. Don't rush, just hold on. The black oil was burning out. His breathing got heavier. The red glow on his back dimmed. His muscles started shrinking. His strikes got weaker. His teeth scraped my forearm, but couldn't crack the scales anymore, only leaving faint white lines. When he was at his weakest, I struck. One open palm hit to his chest with everything behind it. He flew backward, slid through the mud for over 10 feet, and smashed through a rock before stopping. He lay there, chest heaving, limbs spread out. I stood over him. My shadow covered half his body. I was scratched up, muddy, bleeding green-black from 3 grooves on my neck, with cracked scales on my left forearm. But my abundance, power, and dragon healing were already closing everything up. He stared up at me and roared, but it was despair more than fury. Is this what a true dragon is? Are gnolls just forever stuck in the mud? Never able to stand up? I won't accept it. I won't. The shout echoed across the clearing and faded. I looked past him. The fighting had stopped. The surviving kobolds were cheering. The remaining gnolls had dropped their weapons and were kneeling. The dead from both sides lay where they fell, the only proof they'd ever been here. I won, and I'd bought myself at least a stretch of peace to keep growing. Kook lay in the mud, chest barely moving, staring at the moon. He couldn't make a sound anymore. A complete loser, 1 step from death. I didn't say anything clever. No mocking, no speeches. I just opened my mouth and let a thin green mist roll over his head. A few minutes later, there was nothing left of him but a puddle. I turned around. The battlefield was quiet. The gnolls stared at what was left of their chief and lowered their heads. The kobolds weren't celebrating either. They were looking around and realizing how many friends and family were gone. Grak had been standing on pure willpower. The moment he saw Kook die, his body gave out and he hit the ground. Brew was still alive somehow. He dragged himself up, one hand over the gash in his chest, leaking blood with every step. He picked Buck up out of the mud, put him over his shoulder, carried him back to me, picked up his axe, stuck it in the ground, and knelt. Didn't say a word. The count came at dawn. Brew had 3 broken ribs and that huge chest wound. Buck had 2 broken ribs. Both would be flat on their backs for at least half a month. Of 4 level 3 warriors, only 1 was left. Out of 100 level 2 fighters, 23 survived. The miners got hit worst, down from 200 to about 50, because they'd charged the front lines with pickaxes as cannon fodder to wear the gnolls down. On the gnolls' side, all 10 level 3 warriors were dead. Most of the regular gnolls were dead too. Only 30 were left, kneeling in the mud. I looked at those 30, shaking, crying. Gnolls cry like dogs with stepped-on tails, covered in mud and blood, some with broken arms, bones sticking out. None dared look up at me. All that talk about drinking dragon blood was gone. They just wanted to live. I jumped off my rock and walked up to them. Those who survive can join my tribe. Keyword, survive. I pulled 2 out and pushed them to the middle of the clearing. They understood. They fought each other, no holding back. The less injured one won. I pulled out the next pair. One by one they fought. The winners were missing teeth, fingers, half an ear, but they were alive. 15 survivors knelt before me. I told them straight, you're the lowest members of the Abundance tribe. Patrol, guard duty, mining, hauling rocks, cleaning garbage. Every dirty, hard job is yours. Anyone object? You can leave now. Nobody moved. Of course not. Leave, meant your head flies off. But you won't be starved or killed for no reason. The tribe needs labor. Stay alive, have more gnolls, make the tribe bigger. That's your purpose. Understand? 15 foreheads hit the mud, one after another. Tails tucked. Not a word spoken. The posture said enough. At noon I sent 2 teams out. One went to the gnoll camp to find whatever kook had been drinking. Grak led it. Left arm tied to his chest, right hand pointing the way. The other team cleaned the battlefield, dragged bodies into the forest to bury, collected usable weapons, scraped salvageable mushroom jerky out of the mud. Kobolds and gnolls together, fewer than 100 mouths left. No winners in this fight. Not really. I spent the afternoon on my rock, soaking up sun. Sunlight helps me grow. Energy is energy. By evening, Grak came back with 2 barrels of thick black liquid. Black oil, the stuff that pushed kook to level 5. I leaned down and sniffed. Harsh, burning smell, nothing like the gentle life force I pull from plants. Wild, violent energy, but rich. Very rich. I licked a drop. A burning line shot from tongue to stomach, and green light leaked from between my scales. One taste, and even my dragon digestive system, the strongest in this world, capable of absorbing almost anything, couldn't process it all at once. For normal people, black oil is only good for alchemy equipment. But for a dragon, it's a massive power boost. I had the kobolds carry both barrels to the top of the rocky hill. I clawed a shallow pit into the flat stone, just big enough to curl up in. But before drinking, I went to check on Brew and Buck, both unconscious in the biggest tent, wrapped in hide bandages. I told the guard, when they wake up, the tribe is still theirs to run. They know what to do. Grak nodded. I went back up, curled into my pit, draped my tail over my nose, sealed the entrance with vines, and tipped both barrels down my throat. Sleep hit fast. Energy was more than enough. When I wake up, I'll be a proper young dragon. Outside, the kobolds patched fences. The 15 gnolls hauled stones. Nobody knew that here on the edge of the sunset forest, a brand new tribe had just survived its first night. Its name is Abundance. Its leader is sleeping on top of the hill. He needs time, but when he wakes up, everything will be different. I slept for 3 years. My body kept growing the whole time. The vines I'd used to seal my cave spread across the entire hilltop and down the walls, wrapping half the rocky hill in dark green. My back pressed against the ceiling, my wings finally stretched out properly. No more wrinkled membranes. My consciousness never fully shut off. I could feel myself getting stronger, dragon blood and abundance power working together. Down below, my tribe changed completely. Year 1, Brew went from level 4 to 5, Buck from 3 to 4. Before their wounds even healed, they went out with 20 fighters and absorbed 3 nearby kobold tribes. It wasn't hard. Brew just planted his axe in the ground and the other chiefs knelt. Every kobold can smell a true dragon's contract mark. Population jumped to over 500. Year 2, Brew hit level 6, Buck hit 5. Grak, the scout who first found me, reached level 4. But the biggest gain was 2 dwarves, escaped slaves from the Jaya Principality. They stumbled into Sunset Forest half dead, almost got caught by goblins, and our gnoll patrol grabbed them first. Dwarves know metalwork. Overnight, the tribe went from Stone Age to Iron Age. Brew's old stone axe became an iron one. Regular warriors started getting iron spearheads. The iron came from the mine we took back from the gnolls. Year 3, population passed 1,000. Over 1,000 kobolds, 400 level 2 fighters, 50 level 3 warriors, 300 gnolls. The gnolls still had it rough. Ate last, worked hardest. Not out of cruelty, just not enough resources. Food and weapons went to kobolds first. Gnolls got the leftovers. Their strongest was only level 4, couldn't beat Brew. In this world, weakness is its own punishment. Then trouble arrived. A whole tribe of ogres, over 50, migrated out from deep in Sunset Forest. Their leader was a 2-headed ogre named Ruck, a mutant who could cast spells. Word from other tribes said Ruck's group got driven out of the deeper forest by half-elves. They ate everything on the way, beasts, bark, other tribes, even their own flesh when desperate enough. They hit our westernmost patrol. 3 gnolls, killed 2, 1 escaped to warn us. Brew and Buck talked all night. Next morning, the tribe started building walls. After 3 years of expansion, the settlement was much bigger than the old clearing. They cut the outer trees, raised a log fence, piled dirt behind it waist-high. For watchtowers at the corners, just 4 logs lashed together with a plank on top. The gate was 2 waste stone slabs dragged from the dwarf mine pit. Not pretty, not strong, but better than nothing. My sleeping hill sat right in the center, surrounded by walls. The ogres came on the 3rd evening. The sun had just set when every bird in the forest took off at once, circling above the canopy, too scared to land. Then the ground started shaking. Through the trees, a hand bigger than a whole kobold pushed aside a pine tree like a curtain. Ruck stepped out, 2 heads sharing one massive body, a torn-off chunk of iron pillar in his fist. Behind him, 50-some ogres filed out carrying stone hammers, bone clubs, whole uprooted saplings. They stood outside the wall, grinning at the kobold sentries with rows of yellow teeth. The left head said, "Something big in there. Is big things tasty?" The right head spat out bone chips and said, "Where?" On the wall, the kobold warriors gripped their iron spears with shaking hands. Bruce stood with his axe ready. Buck had a fireball charged on his staff tip, much bigger than 3 years ago. Inside the fort, miners swapped stone picks for iron ones. Knolls were pulled from the tunnels and handed sharpened sticks. And on top of the hill, inside my sealed cave, in the dark, I opened my eyes. Ruck stood outside the wall and laughed at it. "You call this a wall?" He picked up a broken tree stump and tossed it casually. It punched straight through the wood. The wall went silent. Bruce stood on the gate platform with his iron axe, Buck beside him with his staff glowing, Grack on the other side with his iron spear, left arm long healed, just a scar now. "How long can we hold?" Brew asked. "Not long," Buck said. "Level 9 mutant 2-headed ogre. He doesn't even need spells. His fists alone will break this wall open. He's just playing with us." Ruck got bored with the taunting and waved to his ogres. All 50 started picking up everything they could find, rocks, logs, and hurling them at the wall. Wood cracked and splintered. Some kobolds on the wall couldn't dodge in time and got knocked flying. Brew chopped an incoming rock in half with his axe, stone chips cutting his face. Buck blew up 3 logs midair with fireballs. Grack deflected a grinding stone-sized boulder with his spear. The other level 4 fighters did what they could, but there were too few of them. Then the panic started. A kobold miner saw the guy next to him get his skull caved in by a rock, brain matter splashing across his face. He started crying and ran for the ladder. Others followed, kobolds dropping pickaxes, gnolls throwing away sticks, pushing and shoving to get down. Someone fell off and landed on the person below. Grack jumped off the wall and landed in front of the ladder. He drove his spear through the first deserter's chest, a young gnoll, barely a year old. He pulled the spear out, blood running down the shaft, and planted it in the ground. He stared up at the crowd on the ladder with murder in his eyes. Didn't need many words. "Next one who comes down, I stab. Die to an ogre, and at least your fertilizer. Die on my spear. Your meat's not even worth cooking." Nobody moved after that. Ruck watched the whole scene, grinning ear to ear. Pups are pups. He signaled his ogres to keep throwing, ready to flatten the wall completely. Then he stopped. Both heads felt something at the same time, and looked up. A voice came from deep inside the fort, from the top of the rocky hill. Clear enough for every living thing to hear, inside and outside the walls. It carried the irritation of someone who just woke up to find strangers beating on his pets. "Oh, is that so?" On the hilltop, the vines that had been sealed for 3 years began snapping apart. The cave mouth opened. A pair of green slit eyes looked down. Stupid, filthy ogres, wings spread, fully extended now, no more wrinkles. I launched from the cave, all 4 legs off the ground, one wing beat carrying me into the air above the gate. 8 meters long, green scales catching the sunlight, several times bigger than 3 years ago. I'm a proper young dragon now. What exactly do you think life is? Behind me on the wall, Brew and Buck dropped to their knees first. Then everyone else, one by one, knees hitting the ground, eyes looking up at me. Even the wounded went quiet. Outside, the regular ogres stared up, scratched their heads, and some of the dumber ones actually grinned. They pointed at me and muttered to each other, something like, "That's it?" Way smaller than the one deeper in the forest, Ruck wasn't smiling. I could tell he felt it. My body is young dragon-sized, but the energy coming off me doesn't match a young dragon at all. This is a young dragon, his right head whispered. His left head said nothing, mouth slowly pulling into a frown. He stared at me. I stared back. One dragon, one ogre, the wall between us. On the wall, someone started shouting my name, the name nobody had spoken for 3 years. Then more voices joined, louder and louder, impossible to hold back. Everyone on both sides knew the real fight was about to begin. And it all came down to whether the dragon in the sky could beat the two-headed ogre on the ground. I looked down from the air. The wall was covered in kneeling kobolds, some I'd never seen before, new members from the past 3 years, staring up at me with tears in their eyes. 3 years asleep, and these little guys grew my tribe from a few hundred to over 1,000 and built a wall around it. Sure, the wall was full of holes now, but the fact they built it at all meant something. "Brew," I said. He flinched, hearing my voice again after 3 years. "Here," I gave orders fast. "All level 2 fighters and above, out the gate, form a line. Gnolls circle through the west forest and hit the ogre's flank when they charge. Level 1 miners dig traps in front of the wall. Pits, tripwires, spikes, as many as possible." Brew roared it out, and the place exploded into motion. 400 fighters grabbed iron spears. 300 gnolls slipped along the wall toward the western trees, and miners poured out with shovels to start digging. While they dug their pits, I quietly grew sharp wooden spikes at the bottom with my magic. The ogres looked confused. A minute ago these pups were crying on the wall. Now a green lizard shows up, and suddenly nobody's running? Ruck's left head wasn't laughing, though. "Something's wrong," it muttered. "A young dragon shouldn't have this kind of magic density." The ogres charged. The first one stepped into a pit and screamed. A dozen spikes went through its legs. Then more fell in. 6 ogres went down before the rest slowed. The gate opened. Brew walked out first, axe in hand. Behind him, 400 kobolds formed a shield wall, iron spear tips poking through the gaps, gleaming in the morning light. 50 level 3 warriors stood in the second row. Dragon of Abundance. 400 spear butts hit the ground in unison. The ogres threw trees and boulders at the shield wall. The front row shattered. A dozen kobolds flew through the air. But more filled the gaps instantly, shields locking, spears stabbing upward into ogre legs, throats, spines. "Hit the spine, hit the back of the neck," Brew shouted. He buried his axe in an ogre's waist, ripped it out, and chopped its neck. Spine snapped. It dropped, and kobolds pinned it with spears. From the west, the gnolls burst out, 300 of them pouring from the tree-line like a gray-yellow flood, hitting the ogres from behind. They leaped onto ogre backs, bit into necks, tore open windpipes. Every ogre had 4 or 5 gnolls hanging off it. I watched from above. 14 ogres down in the first wave. Kobold and gnoll losses were heavy but acceptable. Time to deal with the boss. "Your turn," I said, and folded my wings into a dive. I pulled up at 30 meters, skimming over the ogre line, and sprayed my breath across them left to right. 7 or 8 ogres got hit full, fur rotting on contact, skin blistering. 2 dropped dead. 5 stumbled backward. The tail end of my breath caught Ruck's shoulder, but his left head was quick. He muttered a word, and a blue shield popped up. My breath splashed off it. The shield held, but he stepped back half a pace. "That all you got, green lizard?" The right head roared, and fired 3 scorching rays at me. I split into 4 copies of myself, mirror image. The fire lines punched through 2 fakes, which dissolved. The left head's eyes went wide. Mirror image. How can a young dragon know? I didn't let him finish. I cast haste on myself, climbed, and dove again, 50% faster this time. Ruck's left head was chanting, building a 4th level fireball. 2 rounds to cast. He was halfway through the second round when I reached him. I slapped his left face with my right claw at full dive speed plus haste. The spell broke. The half-formed fireball exploded in his own hand, burning half his left face black. The left head screamed. The right head paused, then laughed. "Your fault. Should have watched where you were casting." "Shut up." "My face. Where's the shield?" "You cast the shield yourself." I climbed back up, flicked the burned skin off my claw, and circled over the wall. On the ground, Brew's shield wall was holding. Buck's web spell had trapped several ogres, and kobolds were spearing them through the webbing. Gnolls were tearing at the flanks. Ogre numbers had dropped from 50 to under 30. But our losses were climbing too. The shield wall was half broken, and 200 or 300 kobolds and gnolls lay on the ground. Then Ruck's right head pointed its staff up and fired a lightning bolt. No mirror images left to block it. Too fast to dodge completely. It clipped my right wing. Scales blew apart. Electricity ran through the membrane to the bone. Muscles seized. I nearly plummeted. I barely corrected and crash-landed on the wall. Right wing hanging limp, edges still smoking. I pushed abundance power into the wound immediately. Green light pulsed under the charred scales, new tissue growing fast. I looked up at Ruck. Both heads were panting, still bickering. They surveyed the battlefield, dozens of dead ogres, their remaining forces tangled with kobolds and gnolls, and muttered, "Good thing we still have a trump card." My detection spell caught that. My pupils shrank to needles. A trump card? What trump card? On the ground, Brew stood up from a pile of bodies, axe dripping ogre blood. Outside the wall, the fighting raged on. The ground battle was falling apart. Ogres keep regenerating. One got stabbed clean through the stomach, 2 extra spears for good measure, and the kobolds moved on thinking it was dead. It stood back up, the hole already sealed with fresh pink skin, picked up its hammer, and flattened 2 kobolds from behind. "Stab the spine, stab the neck, use fire," Brew yelled. Easy to say. Kobolds can barely reach an ogre's waist, even jumping. Less than half the 400 level 2 fighters were still standing. Over 30 of the 50 level 3 warriors were down. 3 years of building, gone in one fight. The gnolls were worse off. 300 charged the flank. Only about 100 were still on their feet. Their level 4 leader had a crushed leg, but was still dragging himself around, creating openings for others. Buck was on his last drops of magic, eyes leaking blood. He managed 2 final spells, a web that glued 4 ogres together, then a weak imitation of my green dragon breath over them. It slowed their healing just enough. Kobolds swarmed in and turned them into pincushions. Then Buck's staff slipped from his hand, and he collapsed. Brew killed 3 ogres by himself, beheaded one, headbutted another, and cut it in half, and was about to take a club to the back from a third when I landed in front of him. The club bounced off my wing. I whipped my tail through the ogre's upper body and turned it to red mist. "Lie down," I told Brew. He obeyed immediately. I turned toward Ruck. My right wing wasn't fully healed yet, good enough to glide, not great for real flying. So I walked straight through the battlefield, stepping over bodies. One ogre tried to block me. I tail-slapped it across the field, and nearby gnolls pounced on its neck. Ruck's right head cast a stinking cloud, yellow-green poison fog covering half the clearing. Kobolds and gnolls started coughing and dropping inside it. I walked right through. I'm a green dragon. Using poison on me is a joke. When I stepped out the other side, the burned left head mumbled, "He's a green dragon, you idiot. You cast poison at him? Shut up and fight." The right head snarled, slapping Bear's endurance on himself. His muscles swelled, skin thickened, whole body grew a size bigger. I couldn't let him keep buffing. I charged and drove my front claws into his body, but the magically thickened flesh was too dense. My claws stuck. Ruck backhanded me across the clearing. I crashed through a tree stump. Then 3 magic missiles hit my shoulder and chest, cracking 3 scales. I was getting annoyed. Time to finish this. I reached deep inside myself. Abundance and dragon blood merged at my heart, working together for the first time. I spoke dragon tongue magic, and the forest responded. Trees shook, grass grew wild. Flowers bloomed and wilted and bloomed again in seconds. I pressed my right claw into the earth. In the name of abundance, dozens of arm-thick roots erupted under Ruck's feet and coiled around his body. He ripped one free, but sticky sap from the broken end touched his skin and started sprouting. Roots grew out of his own body, from his arms, his back, everywhere. "What is this?" the left head screamed. "I don't know." The right head howled. His arms were forced apart. Roots laced through his armpits, crossed behind his back, locked him completely. In about 10 seconds, the living ogre became a towering tree. Right there, in front of everyone. The battlefield went silent. The last 11 ogres saw their chief, turned into wood, and dropped to their knees in despair. I walked to the tree, glanced back at Brew. He was standing again, leaning on his axe, looking at me and at the tree with something between worship and relief. I could tell he was thinking how glad he was that 3 years ago he chose to serve me instead of fight me. I went to the kneeling ogres. "Don't move. Anyone moves, dies." Vines tied their hands and feet. Two tried to struggle. The vines dug into their wrists until they stopped. I flew back over the wall, wobbly on my damaged wing. "Where's Buck?" Grak was carrying him down from the high ground. Buck was unconscious, blood at his mouth, barely alive. He'd pushed his thin dragon blood too far. The simulated breath had caused a backlash. I put my claw on his chest and fed abundance power into him, calming the raging dragon blood and stabilizing his magic. He coughed up a mouthful of dark green clotted blood. His breathing steadied. I lay down on the gate and gave my orders. "Count everyone. Alive, dead, walking, not walking. Before dark, I want to know how many we have left." Then I rested my chin on my crossed claws and half closed my eyes. I was tired. A young dragon fresh out of a 3-year sleep, thrown straight into a major battle against a level 9 mutant two-headed ogre. As a reward, I decided to take a good nap first. Everything else can wait until I wake up. Somewhere on the outer edge of Sunset Forest, a human noble girl was running from a group of knights chasing her. But that's a problem for later. I woke up feeling good. My damaged wing was fully healed. I stretched it a couple of times. Perfect. The fort was busy. Everyone who could move was hauling bodies, fixing the wall, salvaging weapons. Grak was at the gate with a bandaged shoulder, still seeping blood. He jumped up when he saw me. "Master, where are Brew and Buck?" "Still unconscious." Brew woke once before dawn, ate a little, fell back asleep. Buck is still out, but his breathing is much steadier. I flew to their cabin and peeked through the window. Brew was wrapped in bandages like a mummy, snoring loud enough to shake the walls. Buck lay on the other side, alive, stable. They'd both pull through. My dragon blood from 3 years ago, fused with my abundance power, had pushed their bodies far beyond normal kobold limits. I told Grak he was in charge until the brothers woke up. He blinked. "Me, Brew and Buck are down. You're the highest-ranking kobold standing, and you've been with me the longest. Handle it. Give it back to them when they wake up." "It's not that complicated." I spread my wings and took off before he could argue. I wanted to see the world. Sunset Forest is enormous. Even this small outer section seemed to stretch forever from above. 3 years ago I was earthbound, weak, careful about everything. Now, looking down at the same forest, it didn't seem so scary anymore. I spotted a 6-legged deer darting out of the bushes. Weird-looking thing. My bloodline memory said they don't taste great, so I let it go. Then I found something better. A strange pond covered in yellow mist, the mud around it an unnatural dark green. A pig the size of my old rock boar was rooting around the bank, coated in thick green slime. Everywhere it stepped, the mud hissed and smoked. I searched my bloodline memory. Venom pig, level 3 beast, body covered in corrosive mucus, meat toxic to almost everything alive. But at the very bottom of the entry, in small text, was a note from an ancestor dragon named Salix. However, when the toxin reacts with green dragon stomach acid, it transforms into an extraordinarily delicious flavor. The meat is perfectly marbled, melts in the mouth, with a lingering pine resin aftertaste. If a young dragon finds one, it is a rare treat. Salix. Old Salix barely left any useful combat knowledge in the bloodline memory, but he wrote pages about what tastes good. My kind of ancestor. I'm a food lover across all 3 lives. On Earth, I lived for my mom's braised pork. In my Star Rail life, I crossed half a galaxy for 1 bowl of authentic ramen. Now I'm a dragon with the ultimate digestive system. If I don't use it, I'm insulting my own stomach. I folded my wings and dropped silently. The venom pig was busy eating a rotten root, never looked up. I snatched it off the ground, bit through its neck, and it was done in seconds. The slime burned my claws a little, basically nothing to a green dragon. I gutted it on a clean patch of grass. The meat had beautiful marbling. I took the first bite. Incredible. Salix didn't lie. The toxin and my stomach acid combined into something magical. The meat was impossibly tender, juice flowing with every chew. The thin layer of fat under the skin had a strange, wonderful flavor. I ate the whole thing, then went back and grabbed 2 piglets from around the pond. 1 bite each. Crunchy. I wiped my claws on the grass and lay down, tail wagging with satisfaction. 3 lifetimes of eating, and this meal ranks in my top 3. First place, Mom's braised pork on Earth. Second, that planet's specialty noodles from my Star Rail life. Third, Venom pig. I decided that when Brew and Buck recover, I'm ordering them to raise a whole herd of venom pigs for me. One a day? That's the dragon life. Then I heard noise in the distance. My magic sense picked up something. People, commotion, faint energy. I looked that way but didn't feel like moving. I'd just eaten. Whatever was happening over there, it wasn't my problem. This forest is huge, and I don't have a habit of sticking my nose into other people's business. But on the other side of the forest, a girl named Vivian was running for her life. She was a young noblewoman, torn velvet dress, gold thread sleeves ripped, a bleeding scratch on her arm, hair stuck to her forehead with sweat, dried tears on her face. 7 knights were chasing her. The leader, Marcus, was a level 7 warrior, deputy guard captain for the Countess of Jaya. Vivian knew him. He used to stand behind the Countess at the autumn hunt, always smiling politely. Now he had orders to kill her and bring back her head. 3 days ago, her personal maid dragged her out of bed in the middle of the night and told her Marcus's men were coming to kill her. She'd been running since, burning through all her magic and potions. She only knew a few first-level spells. Her last one, a mud spell, slowed the horses for a moment. Marcus caught up and blocked her path. "Miss Vivian, you're quite hard to chase." 3 days now, she pressed her back against an oak tree, staff raised, ready to cast whatever she had left. She'd rather die fighting than standing still. Marcus raised his hand. 6 crossbows aimed at her. Wind blew through the trees, lifting her hair. And on the horizon, a large shadow was approaching fast. I'd just eaten and was about to nap when my magic sense picked up the commotion. 8 life signs, one with almost no magic left, running my way. I didn't want to get involved. I'm not the forest police. But lying there, a thought hit me. I've had it suspiciously easy this life. Hatched as a dragon, got a kobold tribe on day 1, woke up and crushed a level 9 ogre boss. 3 lifetimes of experience tell me that when things go too smoothly, trouble finds you anyway. Might as well meet it on my terms. Besides, the strongest one over there was only level 7. The rest were level 3. 3 years ago, I might have had to think twice. Now, not even a warm-up. I flew over. 6 crossbow bolts were already in the air when I arrived. I dropped between the girl and the arrows, and vines shot up from the ground to form a wall. All 6 bolts thudded into it harmlessly. I stood there with my wings still spread, looking down at 7 mounted knights. 7 knights chasing 1 level 3 mage, I said in common tongue. Your chivalry is fascinating. The lead knight's warhorse stepped back on instinct. The knight, Marcus, level 7, was drenched in sweat. He'd never seen a dragon in his life. None of them had. Their little principality hadn't seen a dragon in centuries. The 6 behind him looked like their brains had shut down. They'd signed up to kill 1 girl, and now there was a dragon. Marcus forced himself to stay calm. He studied my size and figured it out. 8 meters, not 15 like an adult. A young dragon, maybe level 6. He thought his group might not want to fight, but could possibly run. Stay calm, he whispered to his men. Young dragon at most. Follow my lead. Back away slowly. He pushed battle energy into his sword to show me they weren't defenseless. But he'd already given up on the girl. His thinking was simple. Even a young green dragon outclasses a level 7 warrior head-on. Fail the mission and take a beating back home, or get hit by dragon breath and die. Easy choice. And since green dragons famously love eating elves, and the girl clearly had elven blood, she'd be dead by tonight anyway. The Countess's order would technically be fulfilled, just not by him. As for me, I have to be honest. When I first spotted this girl from the air, I nearly forgot to flap my wings. She was beautiful. Golden hair, perfect features, milk-white skin smudged with blood and mud, which somehow made her look even more striking. Thin, but well-proportioned. 3 lifetimes as a human, and I can say this face would make the top 10 in any beauty contest on Earth. What really caught my attention was the elf blood in her. Green dragons are extremely sensitive to the scent of elves. My bloodline memory has more entries about elves than about almost anything else, second only to old Salix's food reviews. Green dragons love eating elves, especially ones with pure bloodlines. My tongue moved inside my mouth on its own. Every dragon instinct was screaming that the thing standing behind me was very, very delicious. I shoved that instinct down hard. Are you kidding me? I didn't come down here to eat her. Vivian collapsed against the tree, relieved she wasn't dead yet. But I could practically see her brain working. She remembered she is elf blood, and green dragons love eating elves. Out of the wolf's mouth, into the dragon's. She put down her staff, folded her hands properly, and gave me a noble's bow. Her voice was shaking. Honored lord, I am Vivian's son, legitimate daughter of the Sun Baron family of the Jaya Principality. Thank you for saving my life. If you would kill these pursuers and escort me back to the human world, I swear on my family name to send you great treasure and several slaves with elven blood as thanks. My ears perked up. Treasure. Elf-blooded slaves. She knows how to pitch to a dragon. Too bad it's all empty promises. Before I could answer, Marcus moved. He knew if she talked me into helping, all 7 of them were dead. He went full speed at her. A level 7 warrior's killing strike, aiming to split her head open, then run while his 6 men bought him time. Stupid. I backhanded him with my right claw. His steel chest plate caved in, and he flew sideways into a tree, slid down the trunk, and lay there half dead. The 6 remaining knights watched their strongest get swatted like a bug. Every dragon horror story they'd ever heard flooded back at once. Then one young knight remembered something a bard once sang. If a dragon catches you, don't panic. Offer your family's gold as ransom. Some honest dragons will actually let you go. What that kid didn't know is that the bards are usually talking about metallic dragons. I'm a chromatic dragon. We have a different reputation. We surrender, he squeaked. We're knights of the Jaya Principality. Our families will pay gold for us. The others started nodding frantically, shouting family names and amounts. Vivian cut in from behind me. My lord, could you perhaps hand them over to me to deal with? Hand them to you? I turned my head and let her see my teeth, still stained pink from the venom pig. How many gold coins is your face worth? She went pale. I looked back at the knights. Ransom is negotiable, but you're all my prisoners now. Then I turned to Vivian and put my face right in front of hers. She could see her own reflection in my slit pupils. You said escort you back to the human world? You think I just hatched yesterday? Send you home, and you'll deliver treasure? Or will you tip off your principality's master-level fighters and have them come hunt me down? A principality your size has at least a dozen masters. I'm a young dragon. You think I'm running a charity? She opened her mouth. I didn't let her speak. All of you, from now on, are my prisoners. Your lives belong to me. Ransom will be paid. But until then, you're slaves. I pressed my claw into the ground and grew 2 vine cages, a bigger one for the 6 knights, a separate smaller one for Vivian. I'm a gentleman about these things. Men and women in separate cages. I may be a dragon now, but I still have manners. I grabbed 1 cage in each claw, spread my wings, and took off. The knights tumbled into each other. Vivian sat in the corner of her cage, back against the vine bars, watching the ground shrink below her. Pure despair in her eyes. Not a bad haul for one afternoon. 3 venom pigs in my belly, 7 knights waiting to be ransomed, and a baron's daughter with elf blood. When the fort appeared on the horizon, Grak was squatting by the gate talking to some kobolds. He heard my wings, looked up, and saw me carrying 2 cages full of humans. Master, he called up, didn't you say you were going out to see the world? I set the cages down in front of the gate. The knights spilled out in a heap. Marcus groaned, probably made his injuries worse. I folded my wings and landed on the gate. Saw it, I said. Brought back some local souvenirs. After dropping off the prisoners, I went back to my rock, but couldn't settle down. The memory of that venom pig kept nagging at me. So I flew north along the stream and found an even bigger family. 2 boars, 4 sows, 8 piglets. I ate 1 boar to satisfy the craving, then stuffed the rest into vine cages and brought them home. Grak watched me land with a net full of squealing, acid-spitting pigs. Master, you want us to raise pigs? Yes. 1 boar for breeding. For pregnant sows. 8 piglets to grow. Build the pen near water. Keep the mud wet. Use stone walls because their slime eats wood. If one dies, you spend a month in the mines. He looked at the boar spraying acid on his feet, sighed, and started yelling at 2 miners to find rocks. I call this the Venom Pig Sustainable Development Strategy. Then I remembered my human prisoners and called for them. The jail was a reinforced dirt hole with 2 rooms, 6 knights in one. Marcus alone in the other since he's level 7 even if half dead. Vivian's vine cage sat in the back, separated from the 11 ogre prisoners by just 1 wooden fence. I did that on purpose. 2 days next to creatures that stare at you like dinner tends to make people cooperative. They were brought up to the hilltop. 6 knights knelt in a row. Marcus was dumped to the side, barely breathing, and Vivian stood at the front with her hands tied behind her back, pale, lips cracked, hair tangled, but still holding herself like nobility. Even as a prisoner, she kept her dignity. Interesting girl. One at a time, I said. Tell me who you are, where you're from, and why you were trying to kill her. Answer well, and I'll consider your ransom terms. Answer badly, and you sleep with the ogres tonight. They talked fast. They were guards from the Sun Baron family in the Jaya Principality, originally assigned to escort Vivian north for an arranged marriage. But 2 days before departure, the old guard captain was mysteriously reassigned. They later learned his body was found in a ditch outside the city, 3 stab wounds, all in the back. Marcus took over, told them the captain died in an accident. Don't ask questions. After they set out, he changed course and revealed secret orders from the Countess. Kill Vivian in Sunset Forest. The Countess is Vivian's stepmother, the Baron's second wife. Vivian's father died 3 years ago. By law, the title goes to his eldest legitimate daughter, Vivian. But she was only 14 then, so the stepmother took over as regent. 3 years of regency, and she decided she liked the power too much to give it back. The only way to keep it was to make Vivian's death look like an accident, killed by forest monsters, nothing to do with her. Each knight was promised 50 gold coins. They claimed they didn't know about the murdered captain until it was too late. By then they were already in too deep. Classic. Stepmom kills stepdaughter for the inheritance. I watched enough palace dramas on Earth to recognize this plot. Apparently crossing into a fantasy world doesn't change the script. Vivian stood there looking exhausted, like someone who'd always suspected the truth and was just now hearing it said out loud. Her stepmother had stripped away her servants, her property, her authority over 3 years. The arranged marriage was to a northern baron 20 years older, whose previous 2 wives supposedly went mad from his cruelty. And Vivian had talked herself into accepting it, until her personal maid dragged her out of bed and told her the guards were coming to kill her. The maid is dead now. The guards turned on her. She ran for 3 days, and a green dragon saved her. A human, hunted by humans, saved by a monster. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Looking at her face, I felt a spark of excitement. Not that kind. I've lived over 300 years across 3 lives. I'm past that. This was strategic excitement. A baron's legitimate daughter with inheritance rights to a centuries-old noble house, elven blood in her veins, and a stepmother who wants her dead? In a game, she'd be an NPC with a quest marker floating over her head. My tribe has hit a ceiling. 1,000 mouths, enough food, basic iron weapons. But to go further I need resources, trade, and allies. A human noble with a legal claim to a barony? That's a key to the civilized world. That's what decides whether my next few centuries of growth are fast or slow. Vivian didn't know what I was thinking. She just saw my green eyes locked on her. She took a breath, the kind you take when you've decided you're probably going to die anyway, so you might as well swing big. She wiped her tears with her bound hands, stepped forward to the most visible spot, lifted her chin, and let the wind blow the hair from her face. "Great dragon," she said, voice perfectly steady this time. "Would you perhaps be interested in the wealth of a baronial house that has stood for centuries?" The wind caught her hair, and from my angle, I could almost swear a blue exclamation mark appeared above her head. My eyes narrowed. My mouth curved up. Things just got very interesting. I lay on my rock and looked down at this wrecked noble girl staring back at me without flinching. She had nothing left. No money, no soldiers, no family backing. But those eyes told me she'd stopped caring about what happened to her. That made her dangerous in a useful way. "Why should I believe you?" I asked. She laid it all out. Her father was the rightful lord of the Sun Barony. When he died 3 years ago, the title should have passed to her, but she was only 14, so her stepmother took over as regent. The nobility council doesn't recognize the stepmother. They only accept Sun family blood. That's exactly why the stepmother needs Vivian dead. As long as Vivian breathes, the woman is just a placeholder. Then came the real pitch. "I can be your agent. You can't walk into the human world. Nobody negotiates with a chromatic dragon. But they'll negotiate with me. I go back as the Baron's legitimate daughter, reclaim my title, and everything. The treasury, the mines, the trade taxes, centuries of wealth. All becomes yours. You don't even show your face. You just stand behind me." The farther away you stand, the more scared they are, and the easier it is for me to win. Smart. Very smart. And after you get your title back? What stops you from calling in your principality's masters to hunt me down? She looked me dead in the eyes. I'll sign a master-servant contract with you. My pupils narrowed. You know what that means? Soul binding. You die, I die. I betray you, I die. One thought from you, and I'm in agony. Any hostile intent triggers a backlash. She said it like she was reading a grocery list. My father is dead. My maid who stayed with me for over 10 years is dead. The old guard captain is dead. My escorts turned on me. My stepmother wants me killed. I'm 17. Everything I ever had is either dead, betrayed me, or waiting for me to die. I have nothing left to lose. She paused, and a thin smile crossed her face that was honestly a little chilling. So I don't care. At least with the contract, I can drag those people down to hell with me. I laughed. I actually laughed. I'd come down here planning to squeeze some gold out of these humans, and instead I got a noble girl volunteering to chain her soul to mine. It's like going to the fish market and having a fish jump onto the cutting board and ask to be scaled. Deal. I stood up and pricked my claw. One drop of dark green blood floated to her forehead and touched down. A few syllables of dragon tongue, and the contract locked into place. A faint green flash, then a tiny mark, barely visible unless you looked closely. I felt the thread connect to my mind. As long as my soul stays stronger than hers, it holds forever. Could she ever surpass me? I glanced at this 17-year-old level 3 girl. Her entire family line probably never produced a single master-level fighter. Me? I'll hit master rank the moment I reach adulthood. Surpass me? Maybe in her next life. Actually, probably not even then. Vivian felt the thread too. She could even sense my mood. I was in a good mood. The 6 knights watched the whole thing, faces draining white. They understood instantly. The dragon now held Vivian's soul, and through her, the entire Sun Barony. And they just spilled every secret they had. Their ransom plan was dead. Even if I let them go, would Vivian? They betrayed her days ago. Then Vivian turned around, and she wasn't the same girl anymore. Her posture shifted. She stood like a real noble heir. Master, one more suggestion, she said, giving me a curtsy so perfect it almost made you forget her dress was in shreds. These 6 come from knight families that have served the Sun House for centuries. Their loyalty was compromised, but they're still level 3 knights. Instead of ransoming them, have them sign contracts too. When I return to the principality, I'll need knights I can use. The 6 flinched when she said, sign contracts. None dared object. I looked them over. 6 level 3 human knights. My tribe already has over a dozen level 3 kobold warriors and a few gnoll fighters. Buck is level 5, Brew is level 6. These 6 were less appealing to me than a herd of venom pigs. At least the pigs taste good. My soul contract slots are limited, I said, not hiding my disdain. Wasting them on these guys? Not worth it. You sign them, doubt me? You're my servant. Your subordinates are my subordinates' subordinates. They were your family's vassals to begin with. Signing them back seems pretty natural, doesn't it? The youngest knight knelt first. The other 5 followed, one by one. What choice did they have? The alternative was bunking with the ogres. Vivian watched them kneel, mouth curved just slightly upward. Then she turned and curtsied to me again, lighter this time. As you command, my master. The sun was warm. The knights knelt in it, looking at that small smile, and felt cold running down their spines. This wasn't the Vivian from a few days ago. They didn't know what was coming, but they knew that being alive was better than the alternative. Dead people don't get a say. I rested my chin on my claws. 300 years across 3 lives, and I've rarely met someone quite like her. What happens next? We'll see. Even if it doesn't work out, it costs me nothing. Just a little side quest on the road to growing up. After living this long, a dragon deserves some entertainment. I noticed Marcus was still alive, barely. 2 days in that filthy dungeon after I'd swatted him into a tree, and he was still breathing. Tough for a human. I could have saved him with a drop of dragon blood, but why waste it? Vivian didn't want him alive either. She stood over him, looked at him for a moment. No hatred on her face, just nothing. Then turned to her 6 freshly contracted knights. Kill him. They hesitated. The young one smiled first. They had no way back anyway. He picked up a stone and did it. The others followed. Vivian stood beside them holding a tiny crystal, recording the whole thing with a first-level spell. A loyalty test, proof that binds them all. She tucked the crystal away without looking at the body. Feed him to the ogres. I watched everything. Said nothing. Vivian needed rest before heading back to the principality. 3 days of running had left her injured and magically drained. The knights were in rough shape too. I gave them 7 days to recover. In the meantime, I put Vivian to work. You've had education, managed territory, no numbers and construction. My kobolds are loyal, but not exactly brilliant. Spend your recovery time straightening things out. She curtsied in an oversized kobold-traded cloth robe, sleeves too short, hem barely reaching her ankles. As you command, master. She walked the walls and found 3 problems immediately. Drainage ditches too shallow for rainy season, no arrow slits beside the gate, and watchtowers too flimsy for wind. She picked 2 knights who knew carpentry, put them in charge of kobold work crews, and within 2 days the defenses were noticeably better. Then she tackled the pig situation. My venom pigs were in a stone pen that was basically a toxic swamp. The piglets were choking on concentrated venom, and the boar had already knocked down 1 wall and escaped twice. Grak had to chase it down personally. Vivian redesigned everything. She moved the pen to better ground, dug a water channel from a nearby stream to keep things wet but diluted, used a mud-to-stone spell too. Build 4-foot walls with deep foundations, added drainage trenches, and a settling pool for excess venom. Then she found out Grak had been feeding them meat and mushroom scraps. You're raising them like dogs. Venom pigs are mostly herbivores. Without toxic plants in their diet, they get weaker over time. She wrote out a feeding recipe from a beast-raising manual she'd memorized as a child back when she was being groomed to manage her family's magical livestock farms. She never imagined she'd use that knowledge in a monster settlement teaching kobolds to raise pigs. Grak took the recipe, couldn't read a word, and handed it to a literate kobold. Follow this. Mess it up and you bunk with the ogres. When Grak reported all this to me, my mouth curved up. This girl was more useful than I'd expected. I think I pulled a gold tier card. Brew woke up on day 3, his first instinct to check if our contract still held, his second to find his brother. Buck was awake, but too drained to lift a finger. They looked at each other. Still alive? Buck whispered. Brew swore at him, then laughed. Both alive. Good enough. Vivian visited them on day 4. She walked in, and they both went quiet, because the tiny green mark on her forehead was the exact same color as the scale mark on Brew's chest. Same master. They exchanged nods. Quick introductions. When she left, I could tell she'd already sized them up. 1 strong kobold, 1 smart kobold. Day 7. Everyone was healed. Time to go. I crouched on the gate and called Vivian aside, put up a sound barrier. Take this. I let a drop of green blood form on my claw tip. It hardened into a small bead with an amber-like shell, a pearl of true dragon blood. I set it in her open palm. If you hit trouble you can't handle, swallow it. Remember, staying alive comes first. Lose your life and nothing else matters. She looked at the bead. 1 drop of real dragon blood, probably worth more than every potion she'd ever seen combined. She bowed, turned, and walked out the gate. 6 knights followed, armor clinking softly. Brew stood at the gate leaning on his iron axe, watching 7 humans disappear down the forest path into the dusk. Master, he said, will she come back? Don't know, I said. But if she does, everything will be different. After Vivian left, I finally got to relax. I spent a whole morning just lying on my rock, half asleep, tail swaying. This is how a dragon should live. I flew a patrol loop around my territory. The venom pig pen had been expanded. The boar was rooting in the mud. The 4 sows were napping under a new roof, and the 8 piglets had doubled in size, fighting over food. Grak had a kobold guard sitting on the wall with a stick, looking as serious as if he was guarding treasure. I circled twice, satisfied, and flew on. I checked the mines. Ogres in chains hauling stone, kobolds cracking whips. Flew north and saw new kobold tribes settling in, digging burrows, learning to build from the veterans. Everything running smoothly. I came home and lay back down. For the first time in almost 4 years, I had nothing to worry about. No fighting, no sleeping through growth spurts, no preparing for battle. Just peace. After 5 or 6 days, everyone had recovered. Brew and Buck were back on their feet. Grak had his bandage off and was proudly showing everyone his new scar from the ogre fight. The wall was repaired, The gate had new iron hinges, the watchtowers were 3 times thicker, and Vivian's arrow slits were all finished. I called the leadership to the hilltop, Brew and Buck in front, Grack beside them, and Ral the Knoll leader standing slightly behind. Ral was the only one of those original 15 surrendered Knolls who'd made it to level 4 and survived 3 years. He looked nervous. Knolls had never been invited to leadership meetings before. First thing, I said, the Knolls fought well. You broke the ogre's flank. You chewed through their rear. Without you, the shield wall would have fallen. From now on, Knolls have equal status with kobolds. Same food, same housing, same share of loot. Ral froze. His ears twitched. Then he dropped to one knee, fist on chest, head down. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. 3 years of waiting, from prisoner to recognized leader. Second, now that Knolls are moving up, the worst mining jobs go to the ogre prisoners. They're big, strong. One ogre does the work of dozens of kobolds. No reason to waste them. Brew grinned. After how many warriors those ogres killed, making them dig was letting them off easy. Then I asked Buck for numbers. Over 1,000 total, 800 kobolds, over 100 Knolls, 11 ogre prisoners. With new tribes and stragglers joining since the battle, we were approaching 1,500. But food was becoming a problem. Mushroom farms couldn't keep up, and forest hunting grounds were getting thin. Buck mentioned 2 other food sources, a human trade caravan that comes through maybe once a year, exchanging flour for our iron and beast hides, and some half-elf settlements to the east that occasionally trade grain for iron, ore, and dried mushrooms, though they're very closed off and suspicious of monsters. Half-elves. My bloodline memory had plenty on them. Mixed blood of humans and elves, treated as the lowest class in the Elven Empire. No citizenship, no property rights, no access to advanced magic. Most work as laborers in plantations and mines with no hope of rising. Old Salix even left a note, mostly too tough and stringy. Not tasty, but I wasn't thinking about eating them. I was thinking about grain. Tell me more about these half-elves, Buck explained. About 1,000 years ago, a half-elf hero named Jurla led tens of thousands in a rebellion against the Elven Empire. They fled east to the edge of Sunset Forest. After Jurla died, most scattered. Some went back to slavery, some stayed and built small settlements. The biggest one, named Jurla after the hero, has about 600 people. The others have 200 or 300 each. They know farming and livestock. Their grain output is far more stable than our mushroom digging. But they're extremely closed off, never let outsiders inside their walls, and trade only through fence gaps. Here's the problem my bloodline memory spells out clearly. Green dragons are the most feared of all chromatic dragons among elves and half-elves. If they discover a green dragon nearby, they'll throw everything they have at killing it, because green dragons are famous for eating elves alive. So I can't just fly over and introduce myself. This needs a smarter approach. I'll handle the food problem, I told them. Brew and Buck didn't ask how. My word is enough. That evening I flew east alone and found the settlements from the air. 5 villages along a stream, surrounded by neat farmland, straight furrows, crisscrossing irrigation channels, nothing like our messy mushroom patches. The biggest settlement had log and stone walls, smaller but far more refined than ours. It looked like a miniature human border town. I didn't go down, just circled twice at a distance, memorized the layout, and flew home. Some things can't be rushed. Food is a long-term problem that needs a long-term solution. Half-elves aren't ogres. I can't just smash them into submission. I need something cleverer. I have a rough plan forming, but it needs more thought. Meanwhile, down in the Jurla settlement, their leader, a level 13 elf ranger named Jare, was having a very bad evening. She'd called all 5 settlement representatives to her table. You all know, she said, a green dragon, less than half a day's travel from us. Someone saw it circling over the eastern forest. Silence. Everyone was thinking the same thing. A green dragon discovering 1,000 half-elves nearby is like finding an all-you-can-eat buffet. We can't beat it, one young representative said bluntly. Even if it's just a young dragon, a dragon is a dragon. GRA is our strongest at level 13, but dragon power doesn't work on a simple level scale. Nobody said fight, the gray-haired elder replied. But where do we run? East is the human principality, and they might not even take half-elves. GRA cut off the argument. Tomorrow morning, Send a scout toward the kobold settlement. Find out everything about this dragon. Until we know what we're dealing with, nobody does anything rash. They filed out in heavy silence. Gra stood alone on her wall, looking west toward the forest. It looked the same as always under the moonlight, but she knew nothing was the same anymore. Whether this was an opportunity or a disaster depended entirely on what happened next. A half-elf showed up at my gate. His name was Jimmy, brother of the half-elf leader Gra, a level 13 ranger they call Emerald Shadow Archer. He brought 6 warriors in good leather armor with iron swords and short bows, the best their settlement could put together. He was level 9. Not bad for this area. The 6 behind him were level 3. He stood outside the wall and announced himself politely, asking to see the master of this place. Brew went out to meet them. I could tell from up on my rock that Jimmy was sizing Brew up. Level 6 kobold should be easy, but then noticing the pressure didn't match the number. Brew feels more like a level 10 beast these days, thanks to my dragon blood. Walking through the fort, Jimmy looked surprised. He'd expected a monster nest. What he saw was closer to a military camp. Kobolds with iron picks marching in order, gnolls patrolling in formation, ogres in chains hauling stone. He came up the hill carrying a wooden box. Carved, polished, clearly expensive. When he opened it, I saw gold coins, hundreds of them, neatly stacked, gleaming in the afternoon sun. Red and blue gemstones scattered on top. I had been about to hit them with dragon pressure as an intimidation tactic. I pulled it back so fast I nearly strained something. My claw, already halfway extended, froze in midair. A vine slithered silently from the rock wall, wrapped around the box, and lifted it to me. I poked through the coins with a claw tip, held a ruby up to the light. Pure, valuable, set it back, and swallowed the entire box whole. "You half-elves have good manners," I said. Jimmy launched into his rehearsed speech. "Great true dragon, my sister the Emerald Shadow Archer has long admired you, heard of your fame, sent me to pay respects." All very formal, very polite. I nearly laughed out loud. Admired me? Heard of my fame? I've been in this forest 4 years, 3 of them asleep. What fame? They saw me circling over their settlements 2 days ago, panicked, and scrambled together a box of protection money overnight. This gold was probably saved up to buy farming tools from human merchants. But I didn't call him out. You don't slap a smiling face, especially when that face comes with a box of gold coins. "I received your goodwill," I said. "Tell your sister that I treat friendly neighbors with courtesy. I hope both sides can maintain this kindness." I waved a claw at Brew. "Put them in decent quarters. These are guests. Treat them well." Brew nodded and led them away. As Jimmy walked off, one of his young warriors tugged his sleeve and whispered, "Jimmy, your legs are shaking." He looked down. They were. Had been since he opened the box. His sister's long robe had hidden it. "Shut up," he muttered. "Shaking in front of a dragon isn't shameful. Getting home alive is what matters." I watched them disappear into the fort. Sensible people, these half-elves. I can work with sensible people. Far to the east, on the Jurla settlement wall, Gra stood in the same spot as last night, staring toward the western forest, winding an old bowstring around her finger over and over. Next morning, Jimmy and his warriors ate breakfast in our mess hall. Mushroom soup with rough wheat cake, not tasty but filling. Then came up to the hilltop for the real talk. I'd grown a vine table and chairs overnight. My people sat on one side. Brew, Buck, Grack, and Ral the Gnoll leader sitting furthest away since gnolls had only just been promoted. Jimmy and his 6 warriors sat on the other side. The mood was completely different from yesterday's gift-giving. Everyone could feel it. Today was business. I'd been thinking all night. The half-elves have food, money, and farming knowledge. They're afraid of me because green dragons eat elves, but they can't guarantee they'd win a fight, so they're willing to talk. That doesn't mean they'll accept anything I ask. They showed goodwill to avoid bigger losses, not to become servants. But I don't want a one-time protection payment. I need their surplus grain next year, the year after, and every year after that, through fair trade that keeps my tribe growing steadily. And I think I know what they want most. "Let's get to business," I said. "You have plenty of food. My tribe doesn't. I need a stable grain supply." Jimmy nodded. He'd walked around the fort yesterday and already figured this out. Nearly 2,000 mouths, including ogres, and our mushroom farms can't keep up. "We can provide food, but we need something of equal value in return," he said. Buck laid out our inventory on the table. Dried mushrooms, steady but small output. Iron ore, decent quality, limited vein. Beast hides, mostly level 2 to 4, only a few higher. Venom pig toxin, production not up yet. Jimmy pushed the list back. We grow mushrooms too, and more than you. We hunt our own hides. We have our own iron vein. Our smiths aren't as good as your dwarves, but good enough. The venom pig toxin might be worth something, but the quantity is too small. He paused. Anything else? Silence. Bru's fist clenched and unclenched. We had nothing they needed. Then I spoke. Yes, everyone turned to me. In exchange for your grain, I said, when I reach legendary rank, I will support your return to the Elven Empire and help you take back your ancestral lands. Dead silence. Jimmy's face froze. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. The 6 warriors behind him went still as statues. Return to the Elven Empire. Take back the half-elf homeland. Nobody in their settlements had dared say those words in a very long time. Jurla the hero died 1,000 years ago. The living either can't remember what home looked like or were born in this forest. GRA is the strongest they've produced in a millennium, level 13, and even that's nowhere near enough to challenge an empire. So nobody talks about going back anymore. But I knew exactly what I was offering. Legendary rank isn't something you pick up at a market. The entire Sunset Forest might not have a single legendary being. But I'm a dragon. Chromatic dragons who survive to adulthood are practically guaranteed to touch legendary. I just need to keep living and growing. At my rate, it's almost certain. The future belongs to me. And these half-elves have been scraping by on the forest's edge for 1,000 years, waiting for exactly this, someone legendary level who would stand on their side. Their founding hero was a legendary, the one who led them to freedom. In their eyes, legendary is the pinnacle of power. Of course, I know the Elven Empire is a continental superpower that won't fold to 1 or 2 legendaries. But the half-elves don't know that. And honestly, by the time I'm legendary, who knows how strong I'll actually be? Jimmy lowered his head. He took a slow breath. Are you serious? His voice was much quieter than before, as if he was afraid he'd heard wrong. I didn't answer. I just looked at him with my green-slit eyes and let the silence do the work. Jimmy asked the question I expected. How can you be sure you'll reach legendary? And even if you do, that's 100 years from now. How do we know you'll keep your promise? I let him ask. It meant he was hooked. Your first question, I can't guarantee it. Just like you can't guarantee your sister will still be holding her settlement next year. Your people survived 1,000 years out here not because anyone gave guarantees. You survived by gambling. You bet on Jurla and won. Now I'm asking you to bet on me. Your second question is simpler. Have your sister sign a dragon bloodline conversion contract with me. After conversion, her life is tied to mine. If I'm alive in 100 years, she'll be alive too, as a dragon-blooded vassal. And anything I promise to my people, I deliver. That's the one line I don't cross. Jimmy froze. He understood what dragon bloodline conversion means. Dragon blood enhancement, longer life, a huge jump in power, but your soul is permanently bound to the dragon. The dragon dies. The vassal suffers catastrophic damage. The dragon lives. The vassal can never betray. Accepting this would mean handing the entire half-elf community's fate to me. He stood up from his chair. No, absolutely not. You're not asking for grain. You're asking for our people's future. Food we can negotiate. Our freedom we cannot hand over. What freedom? I said. 1,000 years you've been out here. Has any hope of revival appeared? You could keep drifting until some passing powerhouse wipes you out with a stray attack. Or you could bet that after I reach legendary, I'll help you take back what's yours. No. I straightened up and looked down at him. This isn't yours to decide. You're a messenger, not your people's leader. You can't make this call. So why don't I go talk to the person who can? He stared at me. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Because he knew I was right. He could argue terms and question details, but the final decision belonged to one person only. I told Bru and Buck to keep treating them well, then spread my wings and took off toward the half-elf settlements. Jimmy watched me shrink to a dot on the eastern horizon, then sank into his chair and buried his face in his hands. It's over, the young warrior beside him whispered. Shut up, Jimmy said, but I knew what was going through his mind. He'd said no out loud, but inside he was thinking about Bru, a kobold, level 6, who radiates pressure like a level 10 beast, all from my dragon blood. Now imagine his sister. Level 13 Ranger, the Emerald Shadow Archer, descendant of Jurla himself. What would she become with dragon blood conversion? Their people had waited thousands of years for one legendary to lead them to freedom. They got Jurla, who saved some of them but died. Since then, nothing. Their strongest in 1,000 years is GRA at 13. Impressive for this forest, meaningless against the Elven Empire. They don't dare even dream of going home. So when I offered legendary level support for their homeland, Jimmy's heart moved whether he wanted it to or not. They're Jurla's descendants. They're supposed to carry the mission of liberating all half-elves. But they're too weak. They never inherited their ancestors' talent. Even GRA's ceiling is probably just master rank. Nothing against an empire. Back on the hilltop, Bruce scratched his head watching me disappear eastward. Isn't there a level 13 ranger over there? He asked Buck. Buck watched the sky calmly. If the master dares go, he has his reasons. We just follow. I flew straight to the half-elf settlement. No point negotiating through a messenger who can't make the final call. When I appeared over their walls, the place erupted. Old people grabbed grain and ran indoors. Children got dragged into cellars. The blacksmith's hammer went silent. Guards on the wall drew bows, but nobody dared shoot. They knew that if they fired and didn't kill me, a dragon never forgets. When I grew up, the revenge would be merciless. I hovered above them. Send your leader out. I want to talk to her directly. A woman on the watchtower set down her bow and stood tall. Deep green ranger armor, old cloak, golden hair tied back with a leather cord. No fear on her face. This was GRA, level 13 ranger, descendant of Jurla. I'm here. Why did you come yourself? Where's my brother? She called up. Smart phrasing. She wanted to ask, what did you do to my brother, but held back. Asking that would show weakness, and if something had happened, asking wouldn't help anyway. Your brother is fine, I said. He's being treated as a guest in my settlement. I came because he can't decide the fate of your people. I need the person who can. Is that you? She lifted her chin half an inch and looked me straight in the eye. If you're looking for the strongest among us, that's me. I repeated everything I'd told Jimmy. The promise. When I reach legendary rank, I'll support them in returning to the Elven Empire and taking back their ancestral lands. The price. Dragon bloodline conversion for their leader, binding her fate to mine. Every word carried clearly to every half-elf in the settlement. Then it split apart below me. A young man picked up a dropped sword and shouted at the sky. Why should we? This land is our home. We're not going anywhere. Others joined him. But from the other side, the elders spoke up. One old half-elf said quietly, your grandfather's last words to me were that he wanted to be buried in the homeland. He wanted to go back to the land that belongs to our people. The middle-aged ones, the third generation, born under elven rule, raised on the road fleeing, said nothing. But they didn't argue either. They'd never seen the homeland, but they'd seen their fathers kneel by campfires and bow toward the west. Two sides formed, young voices shouting, this is home, and old voices sitting in heavy silence. GRA stood on her tower and looked back at her people. She didn't stop either side. She didn't take a position. She just turned back to face me. I beat my wings once to hold my hover and watched. For the first time, I truly understood how deep homeland cuts for these people. 1,000 years. Most of them have never seen the place. The Elven Empire could crush any legendary's ambitions without breaking a sweat. These half-elves could choose to stay here, live peacefully, and let each generation forget a little more until the old stories fade entirely. But the elders chose to gamble, not because my offer was generous, because the word, return, is something they've been waiting to hear for too long. Even if they won't live to see it, they want to bet. Stake the whole tribe on that slim hope. I looked down at the ranger on her tower and waited. She was the one who'd decide. She didn't make me wait long. Your terms need discussion. We can't answer immediately. Give us half a day. I folded my wings and landed on an old tree outside their wall. Fine, I said. GRA went back inside to discuss my offer. I waited on the tree outside their wall, patient. I could hear the settlement buzzing beneath me. After a while, the gate opened and GRA walked out alone. Bow in hand. She stopped 20 paces from my tree and looked up. We've finished discussing. I dropped silently from the branches, landed on the grass, and lay down so my eyes were level with hers. Result? She didn't step back. 20 paces away, looking straight into my slit pupils. Fight me. You win. The The half-elf settlements submit to you. You lose, go back the way you came, and we leave each other alone from now on." She paused. "If we do sign dragon bloodline conversion, there must be an additional contract, witnessed by the metallic dragon god, guaranteeing that after you reach legendary, you will help my people return to our homeland. Will you sign that?" I liked her. No games, no stalling, no fear. Just straight talk. Better than most idiots I've dealt with across 3 lifetimes. I found out later what happened inside their council hall. 3 representatives, 3 opinions. The old elder early wanted to gamble. "We've waited 1,000 years. When does the next legendary come along? Another 1,000? He suggested demanding a God-witnessed contract to ensure my promise. If I refuse, it proves I'm lying. If I accept, divine punishment chases oath breakers to the ends of the earth. The young warrior Maud refused on principle. Green dragons can't be trusted, and this forest is the only home he's ever known. His father was born here. His grandfather was 3 years old during the escape and couldn't even remember the homeland's full name. Why risk everything for a place none of them have seen?" The middle-aged Robbie saw both sides. "The hope is real, but so is the risk. Even if I sign, a normal green dragon tops out at half-legendary in adulthood. The Elven Empire would swat that aside with 1 legion. They're betting not just on my word, but on my talent." Giara listened to all 3, then laid out her plan. "Fight me herself. If she wins or kills me, the threat is gone, and they stay here forever. Never mention the homeland again. If she loses badly, they surrender and sign everything. No point resisting what you can't beat. If it's a close fight and we hurt each other roughly equally, they still submit. Because a dragon that can trade blows with a level 13 titled ranger while still a young dragon has terrifying potential. Either kill that dragon or join him. There's no middle ground." All 3 agreed. So here she stood, bow drawn, arrow nocked. I rose from the grass and spread my wings slowly. 1 dragon, 1 ranger, facing each other on the grass outside the wall. "Fine," I said. "A fight it is." Giara's first arrow came so fast, I didn't even see her draw. 1 blink, and it was aimed at my face. I twisted sideways, and it punched through the edge of my wing membrane. I pulled up immediately. Can't stay close to a level 13 ranger. She flashed between the trees and fired again. I rolled in the air. The arrow scraped across my belly scales, leaving a white line. Just a test shot, and it still marked my armor. I dropped every last bit of carelessness right there. She moved fast on the ground, calculating angles, waiting for me to come down. I didn't give her that. I circled and hit her with my breath. She dodged before it landed, barely. The grass behind her wilted, sprouted, rotted, and smoked in a long, scorched line. She glanced back at it. "Your breath is far stronger than what the old books say about young green dragons. You have no idea what else I've got," I said, and chased her path with a second blast. She dodged again, but her footwork was getting tighter. The ranger technique she was using, some kind of feather step, burns stamina fast when you're weaving through dragon breath repeatedly. She knew she couldn't keep running. I owned the sky, which meant I chose when and where to attack, while she could only react. The longer this went, the worse her odds. After dodging a 3rd breath, she stopped in the middle of the clearing. She drew her bow to full and loaded an arrow wrapped in faint green light. All her magic poured into the tip. She could only fire 2 of those per day. If both missed, the fight was basically over for her. I saw it and slammed to a stop in midair. The green streak tore from ground to sky. I twisted. The arrow grazed my left wing root, slicing a thin line through the membrane. Dragon blood seeped out. I had to end this before the second shot. I folded my wings and dove at her. My rear claws reached for her position. She couldn't dodge in time, so she pulled her short sword. Claw met blade with a shower of sparks. The impact split the skin between her thumb and finger, but she managed to deflect most of the force along the flat of the blade. I landed hard, stamped 2 craters in the grass, and swept my tail at her flank. She vaulted over it, 1 hand on the ground, flipping above the tail, and on the way over, her sword nicked my tail tip. Shallow cut, green blood. I didn't look back. I climbed again. Close combat wasn't working. Her agility was too good. I needed range. I chanted dragon tongue and sent vines from the ground at her ankles. She sidestepped. More vines, more roots, all bursting up at once. Her rhythm broke for just 1 beat, and I hit her with my breath at that exact moment. She rolled desperately. The edge of the mist caught her cloak hem, which turned black and crumbled. She dropped to one knee, gasping. After everything, dodging, blocking, fighting up close, her stamina was nearly gone. She decided to finish it. She stood, drew the bow one last time, and poured every drop of remaining magic into the arrow. The bow itself hummed, resonating with her. Every bit of wind on the clearing seemed to flow into that single shot. She released. The arrow punched clean through my wing membrane with a sharp tearing sound. Blood poured from the hole. Pain hit me like lightning. I lost balance and barely managed a controlled crash landing. My left wing hung limp, bleeding from a ragged hole. That was the strongest shot she'd ever fired in her life. Then she saw the green light. Tiny glowing points appeared along the edges of the wound. Torn flesh reconnected. Blood vessels reattached one by one. Muscle fibers realigned. In seconds, the hole closed completely. Every scratch and cut on my body vanished. Her face went blank. This wasn't in any book. Green dragons don't regenerate like this. Her ancestors' records lied. Though in fairness, normal green dragons can't do this. I'm not a normal green dragon. I stretched my healed wing, looked at her, and waited. She let go of her bow. Let go of her sword. You win. She pushed the hair from her face, sweat, dust, exhaustion, pressed her right hand to her chest, and gave me a half-elf submission bow. I lost. As agreed, the half-elf settlements join you. Dragon bloodline conversion, grain trade, contract, all on your terms. I looked down at her, satisfied. All that effort, and I'd gained another powerful vassal. Tomorrow morning, I said, turning toward home. Bring your people. We sign officially. GRA walked back to her gate. On the wall above, the old elder tapped his cane on the ground. I can say one thing for certain. That is no ordinary green dragon. The young warrior Maud slid his sword into its sheath and was quiet for a moment. Maybe you were right, grandfather. The gate closed behind GRA. Torches lit up along the wall, one by one. Tomorrow, everything changes. The next morning, GRA arrived with a full procession. Behind her came the leaders of all 4 other half-elf settlements. Then 100 warriors escorting dozens of carts. Enough grain to feed 2,000 mouths for half a year, plus 1 cart packed tight with gold coins and gemstones. Brew and Buck were waiting at the gate with Grak and Rao. 2 rows of kobold warriors stood at attention, iron spears polished to a mirror shine. When the first cart appeared on the forest path, Brew and Buck stepped forward to welcome them. Meanwhile, Jimmy had barely slept. He'd been going crazy not knowing what happened when I flew to his sister's settlement. That morning, Maud pulled him aside and told him everything. GRA fought me and lost. They were here to swear loyalty. Before Jimmy could spiral into guilt, Maud added something important. Last night we tore through every old book in the settlement. Early nearly ripped apart every box in the attic. We found something in a text brought from the Elven Empire, a description of variant dragons. 1 in a million mutations. Even weak variants reach legendary at adulthood. Strong ones can touch demigod or near-divine power. A variant dragon that survives to maturity basically becomes a continental power. He told Jimmy not to blame himself. Your sister just got a ticket to legendary. This is the chance our bloodline has waited 1,000 years for. Early says none of this was your fault. It was probably decided from the start. I'd spent the morning redecorating. When the half-elves walked up the hill, Jimmy's jaw dropped. The bare rocky hilltop was gone. I'd grown the whole thing over with vines and trees woven into a natural green palace. Vine arches formed a domed ceiling with gaps that filtered sunlight into shafts of light. The floor was soft moss. At the center, an opening straight to the sky poured sunlight onto a dragon throne. Vines curved naturally into armrests, backrest, and a tail groove. No carving, no tools. Just abundance magic shaping living wood. I sat coiled on that throne, wings folded, tail draped along the vines, eyes catching the light. GRA looked up at me, then back at her people. She found Jimmy in the crowd, Maud's hand still on his shoulder. Their eyes met, and she gave him a small nod. I'm fine. She stepped into the central beam of light, set her bow at her feet, and knelt on one knee. The 4 settlement leaders knelt behind her. 100 warriors pushed their carts to the edge of the dome and knelt in rows. Lord Viridian, I am GRA, descendant of Jurla, representing 5 half-elf settlements of Sunset Forest. From this day, We place the fate of all our people in your claws. Your enemies are our enemies. Your will is our direction. She held up a rolled sheepskin, the full inventory of everything they brought. Brew passed it up to me. Then came the conversion. I pricked my chest and let a single drop of green dragon blood form on my claw tip. Your dragon bloodline conversion? I said. Gra walked to the base of my throne and opened her mouth. The blood fell in. The reaction was immediate. She went rigid, nearly buckled. Heat exploded from her throat to her chest, then outward to every limb. Her shoulder blades cracked and shifted, something pushing from inside the bone. Then a pair of green dragon wings burst from her back. Her pupils stretched into vertical slits, color shifting from pale blue to light green. The whole thing took about 10 seconds. When she stood again, she looked at her hands, new scales glinting on the backs. She rolled her shoulders and her wings spread out, wingtips tracing an arc through the sunbeam. How does it feel? I asked. She tested her body for a moment, then looked up at me with a slight smile. Like I could fight 2 or 3 of my old self at once. And I can feel it. My life force is stronger. My lifespan has clearly increased. I nodded. I could sense my blood flowing through her. A level 13 dragon-blooded ranger. She wasn't far below me in raw power now. A proper master-level fighter would have trouble with her. Your brother and your people are waiting below. Go see them. She walked down the steps. Jimmy was staring up at her. Sis, your wings, he started. She glanced down at him. What? Are they ugly? He shook his head. He couldn't find the words. I could tell he was beating himself up, thinking if he'd been stronger, things wouldn't have come to this. I stood from my throne and walked to the edge of the dome, looking down at the settlement below. Kobolds, gnolls, ogres, half-elves, 4 races, all in one place. No fighting, no chaos. It felt like collecting entries in some kind of encyclopedia. Every new race I added gave me a strange sense of accomplishment. Sure, the ogres were doing hard labor and weren't happy about it. But that's what happens when you attack someone's home, consequences. The gnolls earned their equal status through 3 years of service and bleeding in battle. The half-elves came in strong, with farming skills, supplies, and a hero unit, a level 13 dragon-blooded ranger who could probably give a baseline master rank fighter real trouble. They brought their own value to the table. Equal status was only fair. That evening we lit the biggest bonfire the tribe had ever seen. I ordered triple rations for every race. Even the ogres in the dungeons got extra meat and mushroom soup. The guard who delivered their food said they stared at the extra portion for a long time, afraid it was some new punishment. He left without explaining. When he checked back, they'd chewed through the bones. Food is food. Around the fire, kobolds and gnolls fought over roast meat. A few half-elf warriors tried to keep their dignity at first. They consider themselves civilized, after all. But after Grax shoved a dripping slab of roasted beast into their hands, they gave up pretending and jumped into the scrum. On the wall, kobolds and gnolls were having a mushroom wine contest. One gnoll passed out howling after 3 bowls, and some half-elves watching nearby couldn't help laughing. Up on the hilltop, things were quieter. My green palace glowed faintly in the moonlight. The half-elves had brought proper wooden furniture, smooth, well-crafted, a different world from kobold carpentry. The table held fruit wine, mushroom wine, roast beast, wild berries, and honey pine cakes that only half-elves know how to make. Gra sat at my right, wings folded behind her. Brew across from her with a whole roast leg. Buck beside Brew. Grak and Ral also at the table. The conversation drifted from pleasantries into planning. Brew spoke first, tossing a clean bone on the table. Kobolds handle mining. Iron, stone, mushrooms. All resource extraction is ours. And the master's personal guard stays kobold. Buck and I have been with him longest. That position is ours as long as he trusts us. Ral took a sip of fruit wine. Gnolls handle external combat. We tore open the ogre's flank last time. Going forward, kobolds hold the shield wall up front. Gnolls do flanking and pursuit. Daily patrols and hunting are ours too. We know the outer forest best. Gra tapped her cup rim. Half-elves provide ranged combat and logistics. Our archers give fire support on the front line. Experienced rangers can train your scouts. Stable food production is our biggest strength. Existing farmland output is reliable, and we can expand fields as the tribe grows. All supply and grain logistics, we handle. Grak counted on his fingers and summed it up. Kobolds dig, gnolls fight, half-elves farm and shoot, ogres do hard labor. Brue snorted. What else can ogres do? When they behave, we'll talk. Gnolls went through the same thing. Ral glanced at Brue but said nothing, just drank more wine. Brue was blunt but right. Besides the kobolds and half-elves who joined with assets, the gnolls were the success story. Conquered, served 3 years of hard duty, bled in battle, earned their place. Using them as an example for the ogres made sense. Halfway through the feast, I stepped down from my throne and walked to Ral. He set his cup down and stood immediately. You've earned your dragon blood, I said. A green drop formed on my claw. Ral didn't hesitate. He knelt and opened his mouth. He'd been waiting for this. The kobold leader is my vassal. The half-elf leader is my vassal. The gnoll leader had to be one too. That's the structure. Every racial leader bound to me personally. That's how you keep a multi-race tribe stable. The conversion hit Ral hard but fast. Gnoll blood fuses with dragon blood quickly. Green scales pushed through his fur. He grunted a few times, then stood up a full size bigger than before, shoulder height nearly reaching Brue's chin. A small cluster of green scales grew beside his single ear. His pupils turned to slits. Level 6 dragon-blooded gnoll. He looked at his claws, clenched and unclenched, then knelt again with his fist on his chest. Master, I nodded and returned to my throne. 3 racial leaders, all my vassals now. GRA, level 13 dragon-blooded ranger. Brue, level 6 dragon-blooded warrior. Buck, level 5 dragon-blooded sorcerer. Ral, level 6 dragon-blooded gnoll. Plus Vivian far away in the human principality. My contract network covers 4 races. Below, the party was still going strong. A half-elf archer, 3 bowls deep in mushroom wine, was trying to teach gnolls a half-elf folk song. The gnolls' voices dragged every note sideways. GRA was deep in discussion with Buck about something. Brue had grabbed another beast leg. Ral finally finished his fruit wine. Grak was explaining Venom Pig Pen expansion plans to Ral with hand gestures. My vassals were fed, happy, and settled. This phase of expansion has reached its limit. What comes next is rest, internal development, and my own growth. As long as I make it safely through the next stage and reach adolescent dragon, my power will jump naturally. And when that day comes, that's when Viridian truly enters the world. 3 days after the feast, I called everyone in and gave out assignments before my next sleep. GRA would return to the Jurla settlement with most of her people. Keep farming, keep training, keep producing grain. She'd leave a few dozen elite archers stationed at the main fort as a quick reaction force. She didn't need to stay here full-time. I'd contact her through our contract when needed. Brue and Ral would each take their forces outward. Brue heads east with 300 kobold warriors and miners to claim new mine shafts, deeper ones with better or than our surface deposits. Buck went with him to reinforce collapsing tunnels with magic and map the interior. Ral takes the gnolls west to expand hunting grounds. A herd of ironhide badgers gave them 10 days of trouble before Ral's flanking tactics cleared them out. He marked the new territory with gnoll-scent markers and told his hunters, "This forest is ours now." Grak stays at headquarters, walls, mines, and most importantly, my venom pigs. He swore he'd deliver results or die trying. I told him that wasn't necessary. He's an old hand in this tribe. The ogres keep hauling stone. Funny thing, ever since the feast when they got their first full meal, some of them started humming while they work. Turns out when you feed creatures regularly and don't threaten to kill them every day, they start to settle in. A few of them seem genuinely content. Work, eat, sleep, no risk of death. Better than starving in the deep forest. One night before my sleep, I reached out through the contract to Vivian. The connection stretched across the entire Sunset Forest and the Jaya Principality border, landing in the mind of a 17-year-old girl. I tugged the thread. After a moment, she answered, "Master, it's been a while." Her report was good. She'd turned 2/3 of the barony's vassals to her side. After she revealed the truth about the old guard captain's murder, half the Knight families flipped immediately. The 6 Knights' testimony was the key. Their families presented Marcus's secret orders from the Countess at the Noble Council. They'd found the original document in Marcus's belongings. The stepmother had retreated to the Baron's castle with a mercenary company. No master-level fighters among them. Just a matter of time. One complication, the Northern Baron sent a mediation envoy. really just trying to grab territory during the chaos. Vivian made them wait 3 days before telling them the Sun Barony's internal affairs don't require outside interference, then showed them the door. Bold move. Whether the Northern Baron retaliates, she wasn't sure. Can you handle it? I asked. I can. I'm not who I used to be, she said with a laugh. I told her about the half-elves joining the tribe. They'd serve as the diplomatic face when she formalizes the alliance between the Sun Barony and the Abundance tribe. Kobolds and gnolls at the negotiating table might not go over well in human society. Keep my dragon blood safe, I reminded her. It could save your life. Yes, master. Now if you'll excuse me, I have another miserable meeting with my vassals. Sweet dreams. Don't die. The connection cut. Everything was moving forward on every front. GRA developing the rear, Brew and Ral expanding territory, Vivian winning her civil war. Every thread advancing steadily. Having competent people under me, that's the real luxury. 2 months later, I felt the sleep coming. I sent word to all 3 racial leaders. If threats appear while I'm out, handle them together. If you can't win, retreat and wait for me to wake up. Then I sealed myself inside the green palace with vines and trees. The hall was packed with everything the tribe had stockpiled: gold coins, black oil, beast cores, magic gemstones, precious metals. For a dragon, these are the best growth fuel there is. Last time I only had 2 barrels of black oil. This time, the preparation was far more complete. I drank the oil, chewed through gemstones, swallowed gold coins that hissed, and dissolved in my stomach acid, all broken down into pure energy. My abundance power wove together with my dragon blood, locking every particle of energy inside, wasting nothing. My consciousness sank into darkness. In that darkness, my body began changing. Scales thickening layer by layer. Wing membranes tightening, growing tougher. Bones stretching longer, growing thicker, crackling softly. Dragon horns rising slowly from the sides of my skull. When these vines open again, what steps out will be a dragon with a real place in this world. Outside, the Abundance tribe keeps running. Everything moving the way I planned. But when I open my eyes next time, things may have grown far beyond what I imagined. Brew took his 800 kobold sword and shield fighters plus 100 half-elf longbowmen and pushed east along the mine veins. The goal was simple. Those deep iron mines had or several times better than what we had at headquarters, but smaller kobold tribes squatted on every entrance. The first tribe, under 200, level 4 chief, took one look at Brew's iron-equipped army and surrendered on the spot. The second had a level 5 chief with some backbone. Brew split him in 2 with 1 axe swing. Everyone else fell in line. Within a month, Brew's kobold numbers swelled from 800 to 1,500. But only the original 800 plus the half-elf archers were real fighters. The 700 new additions were converted prisoners armed with sharpened sticks and scrap metal. Buck's rule for them was clear. Want to become a real soldier? Earn it with blood. Kill enemies, survive battles, then you can stand in the shield line. Until then, you're cannon fodder. Fill pits, draw enemy fire. Brew had hit level 7 by now. Buck reached level 6. The dragon blood I'd given them was still working. Fleeing kobolds carried news eastward, and the remaining small tribes panicked. They couldn't beat Brew alone, so they banded together under a powerful kobold named Weil, a red-scaled kobold who'd awakened red dragon bloodline. 8 years old, already level 8. He could breathe fire and enchant his claws with flame. A genuine prodigy by kobold standards. While operated out of an abandoned dwarven mine with stone walls. He sat on a chair made from a scrapped mining cart, studded with raw rubies, and looked down at the 6 small tribe chiefs with nothing but contempt. You got chased out of your homes by some green dragon's bootlicker with a few rusty knives, and you come begging me. He didn't hide his disdain. Nobody dared speak. Wall was the kind of leader who might tear your throat out because your eyes flickered when you answered. Red dragon blood gave him power, and red dragon temper and arrogance to match. To prove the point, a servant in the corner fumbled a water basin. It clinked against the stone floor. Without a word, Wall backhanded him with a fire-wreathed claw, slashing his throat open. The servant dropped dead on the spot. The chiefs went whiter than the walls. Wall sat back down like he'd swatted a fly. My rules are simple. Obey and live. Disobey and burn. Don't call me Alliance Leader. Ugly title. From today, call me the Flame King. King of all kobolds. They knelt. One then all. What choice did they have? They'd fled Brew only to land in a worse place. While now commanded about 2,000, his own 1,000 plus the 6 tribes. He declared he'd crush Brew and then deal with that pathetic young green dragon. Completely overconfident. A level 8 red-scaled kobold thinking he could challenge a dragon. Dead man walking, he just didn't know it yet. Brew's spy was embedded in the supply train and saw everything. The murdered servant, the self-coronation, the whole show. He reported it all back that night. Brew heard, king of all kobolds, and laughed. An 8-level red-scaled kobold calling himself king? That's a joke. Buck was already studying the map. He can't hold his allies together. Those 6 tribes came to him out of fear of us, not loyalty. His real force is only his own 1,000. And kobold to kobold, without other races helping them, their weapons can't match ours. The advantage is ours. They planned it out fast. Send the 700 auxiliaries first to probe while strength. Survivors get promoted to real soldiers. Then the main force hits. Brew stepped out of the tent. 800 iron-armed kobolds stood in formation, blades catching moonlight. The 100 half-elf longbowmen at the rear checked their bowstrings and nodded. Move out, Brew said. 1,600 marched east. The battle for the Eastern Territory was about to begin. 1,600 lined up, 800 iron sword and shield kobolds in formation, 100 half-elf longbowmen behind them, 700 auxiliaries on the flanks. Not a textbook formation, but organized enough to terrify any kobold who'd never seen one. While Sentry nearly fell off his tower running to report. While was gnawing roast meat in his hall, he threw it on the floor. 1,600 dares attack my 2,000? Arrogant, he stormed outside, claws already flickering with flame, and pointed at his allied chiefs. Get everyone out. He wants a fight? I'll give him one. 2,000 against 1,600, advantage is mine. Today that green dragon's lapdog learns what a real kobold king looks like. His gates opened, and 2,000 kobolds poured out. Impressive numbers on paper. But look closer. Weapons were a mess. Stone clubs, sharpened sticks, scrap metal. Even Wile's own troops weren't much better equipped. The 6 allied tribes didn't coordinate at all, each group doing its own thing. A mob, not an army. Wile looked down at the chaos and nodded happily. In his mind, more bodies meant more power. He'd never encountered real military organization. Brew stood at the front of his formation, axe planted in the ground, and studied the enemy. He glanced at Buck. Buck was barely holding back a smile. They call that an army, Buck said. Rabble. Send the auxiliaries first. Test them. 700 auxiliaries marched forward, sharpened sticks, broken knives, 0 armor. Buck's deal was clear before they left. Charge forward and survive. You become a real soldier. Run backward. You die on the spot. Many of them were shaking, but nobody ran. The math was simple. Backward is certain death. Forward is maybe life. Wile sneered from his gate. That's it. Beggars. He pointed at 3 allied chiefs. Take your people and wipe out this trash. Lose and don't bother coming back. The 3 chiefs had no choice. Refuse and die now. Lose and die later. They led their fighters out. 1,400 kobolds crashed together in the open field. No tactics, no formations, just chaos. Pure amateur fighting on both sides. The auxiliaries were poorly equipped, but desperate. The allied tribes were pushed into it against their will, fighting half-heartedly, scared of losing to Brew, but also scared of losing too many troops and getting absorbed by Wile. The 2 sides fought to a stalemate. Brew watched and calculated. If his expendable auxiliaries could match 3 or 4 allied tribes evenly, then the only real threat was Wile's own 1,000. He signaled retreat. The auxiliaries scrambled back from both flanks. 700 went out. About 300 came back, half of them wounded. But the survivors' eyes weren't filled with fear, they were excited. They'd earned their promotion into a tribe that serves a real dragon. For kobolds, that's the highest honor imaginable. Form up. Shields forward. Archers, follow close. 800 iron-equipped kobolds advanced in lockstep. 100 half-elf longbowmen followed with bowstrings at half-draw, arrow tips angled toward the enemy. Wile saw the formation coming, and his red slit eyes lit up with excitement. He wasn't afraid. He'd been waiting for this. His own 1,000 were still in reserve. That was his real strength. He leaped from the gate, landed at the front of his forces. Everyone charge. Tear these green-skinned dogs apart. over 1,000 kobolds surged forward and hit the shield wall. The front row of Brew's fighters simply raised their iron blades and chopped down. The first wave of charging kobolds fell in rows. Those behind tripped over the fallen and got trampled by those still pushing from the back. Half-elf arrows sailed over the shield line, picking off the bravest fighters and leaders at the front. Every bowstring twang dropped another charging kobold. The allied chiefs saw things falling apart and immediately started pulling their people back. They'd never been loyal to Weil. They were just scared. No point dying for him. When they retreated, gaps opened everywhere, and Brew's shield wall tore right through. 800 iron-armed kobolds rolled forward like a moving wall, grinding over fighters who'd been screaming, "Flame King," moments earlier. Weil saw it all, his allies running, his vanguard collapsing, his 2,000 becoming a joke. But red dragon blood doesn't allow retreat. Pride and rage burned away whatever sense he had left. His eyes went solid red. He dropped to all fours like a real beast and charged straight at Brew. Every step scorched a smoking print into the ground. Fire poured from his mouth, wrapping his claws and arms. "VRU," he roared. "Die." Brew stood at the front of his formation, raised his iron axe high, and the instant Weil entered striking range, brought it down. Brew's axe came down, and Weil caught it with fire-coated claws. Sparks exploded. They locked together, faces inches apart, pushing against each other. Weil sneered through the flames leaking from his mouth. "Green Dragon's lapdog. That all the strength you've got?" Brew didn't waste words. He pressed harder, then Weil swiped at his waist with his free claw. Brew twisted away. The fire claw scraped across his leather armor, leaving a scorched line. They both jumped back 3 steps. First exchange, even. Brew glanced sideways. The main battle was only 50 paces away, his 800 shield fighters grinding through Weil's forces. He couldn't let his duel spill into the formation, so he dragged the fight to an open clearing off to the side. Weil followed, mocking him. "Running? Aren't you supposed to be that little dragon's best fighter?" He didn't care about being lured away from the battlefield. Red dragon blood made him care about only one thing: killing Brew to prove he was the strongest kobold alive. They clashed again, no more testing. Weil's style was pure aggression. Every swipe aimed to tear Brew apart. No defense, no holding back, trusting his red scales to absorb counterattacks. Brew fought completely differently, deflecting with the axe shaft, sidestepping, redirecting force, waiting for openings. Weil slashed down. Brew dodged and swung upward from below, catching the soft, unscaled flesh under Weil's arm. A huge gash opened up, blood pouring out. Weil screamed, shoved Brew back, then cauterized his own wound with fire claws, burning it shut while grinding his teeth through the pain. "That all you've got, Flame King?" Brew taunted. He rarely mocked opponents, but hotheads like Weil are easy to bait. It worked. Weil lost it completely. He opened his mouth and fired his breath weapon, a pillar of orange flame, nowhere near a real red dragon's power, but terrifying for a level 8 kobold. The blast was too wide to dodge. Brew could only plant his axe in front of himself and take it. When the fire cleared, Brew was standing, barely. His whole body was charred black, but my dragon blood inside him was already working, green light glowing under the burned skin, new tissue pushing off the dead flesh. Weil saw his chance. One more hit and Brew would be done. He dropped to all fours to charge and sank into mud. The ground under him had turned into a swamp, half a foot deep. His claws and legs were stuck. The more he struggled, the deeper he went. Buck stepped out from behind the clearing, staff pointed at the mud, magic still flowing. "Swamp spell. You cheaters." 2 against 1, Weil screamed. Buck looked at him like he was an idiot and expanded the swamp wider. Then vines burst from the mud's edge and wrapped around Weil's body. "We're kobolds. We're monsters," Brew said, limping forward. "Who told you we play fair?" Weil tried to breathe fire at him, but the mud had shifted his balance. The flame sailed over Brew's head. In the gap after the breath, Brew rushed in and buried his axe in Weil's left shoulder, blade sinking to the collarbone. Weil screamed. Fire exploded around him, burning Buck's vines and splashing mud everywhere. Brew ripped the axe free and jumped back. Weil's left arm hung dead, the wound deep enough to show bone. He knelt in the drying mud, using fire to stop the bleeding, shaking all over. Buck hit him with a slow spell. Every movement halved in speed. Weil looked like a beast drowning in tar. On the main battlefield, whilst forces had collapsed completely, the shield wall had rolled over them. Half-elf arrows kept dropping anyone who tried to rally. It was finished, while knelt in the cracked mud, staring up at Brew. Then he smiled, a bitter, broken smile. Why? I awakened red dragon blood on my own. How can I lose to someone who got his power by groveling to a dragon? I won't accept it. I refuse. Brew looked down at him. Before the final blow, he said one thing. Because my master is different. He's destined to be the strongest dragon this world has ever seen. The axe fell. Wall hit the ground and didn't move again. Wall fell with the axe wound running from his collarbone to his chest. His fire went out. His eyes stayed open, reflecting the noon sky. Brew pulled his axe free, looked down one last time, said nothing, and walked away. Buck followed, then turned and burned Wild's body to ash with a fireball. The self-proclaimed Flame King ended in flame. Fitting. Wild's flag came down. Ours went up. Of Brew's 800 shield fighters, 600 were still standing, half of them wounded. The half-elf archers barely lost anyone. A few injuries, no deaths. Brew was quiet about the numbers. 200 veteran kobolds dead, traded for the entire eastern mine chain and the security of everything behind it. He knew the math made sense, but these were his people. Saying it out loud was different. Buck handled it practically. 300 surviving auxiliaries would be promoted to real shield fighters and re-equipped from battlefield salvage. Whatever weapons they couldn't scavenge, the dwarves back at base would forge on rush orders. Total shield force back to 900. The pursuit teams came back dragging 4 allied chiefs on ropes, all caught trying to flee before they cleared the battlefield. They knelt in the dirt alongside their officers, a few dozen in total. Behind them, over 1,000 regular prisoners from Wild's remnants and the surrendered tribes. Brew walked up to the kneeling chiefs. One tried flattery, squeezing out an ugly grin. Lord Brew, no, King of Kobolds. From today you are our new king. We'll follow you just as we followed the Flame King. Brew's hand went to his axe. The smile froze on that chief's face. What did you just call me, King of Kobolds? The voice shrank to nothing. Brew took the axe off his shoulder and pointed it at him. My master, the Dragon of Abundance, hasn't claimed the title of king. He is a true dragon, and he hasn't called himself king. I'm his servant. What right do I have to accept that title? He stared the chief down, eyes burning. You think I'm wild? That idiot couldn't even touch master rank, and he dared call himself king. A frog at the bottom of a well. Thinking the sky was the size of his hole, the chief collapsed, terrified. Wrong compliment, wrong audience. I'll say this once. Anyone mentions that title again, this axe doesn't care who you are. Understood, for heads nodded frantically. Everyone behind them copied. Brew didn't kill them. He picked 4 useful ones around level 5 with clean hands and folded them into the tribe. The rest of the kobold officers got shipped to Rouse Western Expansion. The gnolls needed manpower, and high-level kobolds were better used as frontline support than sitting around eating supplies. The 1,000-plus regular prisoners became auxiliaries under the same rule as before: earn your place with blood or stay cannon fodder. By evening, everything was counted and sorted. 900 shield fighters stood in formation below the stone walls, the 300 new ones standing especially straight. All 7 mine sites were under our control. Auxiliary crews were already clearing and reinforcing the tunnels. This entire region now belonged to Abundance. Buck sent a runner back to headquarters with 2 orders. Rush forge a batch of iron weapons from the dwarves, and have Grax send farming tools and grain. The open ground near the mines could be worked by prisoners who'd otherwise just eat without contributing. Bruce stood on the mine wall looking west. He could trace the hole or vein from where he stood all the way back to headquarters on the horizon. A month ago he'd left with 800. Now he stood at the far end of the entire eastern territory. He thought about what he'd told me before he left. He'd done it, and he realized something about Weil. That red-scaled kobold never understood what a true dragon really was, or why dragons are the natural masters of kobolds. Weil had awakened a trace of ancestral red dragon blood and thought it made him invincible. He never grasped what real power looked like. What are you thinking about? Buck appeared beside him. Bruce shook his head. Nothing. Did the runner leave? Left already. Weapons won't arrive for at least 2 weeks. Until then, mine defense stays tight. Weil's dead, but we don't know if there are other hostile forces nearby. Tomorrow we start sweeping. 50 miles around every mine. Nothing stays armed unless it flies our flag. Buck nodded. The Eastern campaign was over. She had her stepmother cornered. The woman had retreated into Sun City, the biggest city in the barony, with 2,000 mercenaries and city garrison troops, waiting for reinforcements from the Northern Baron. But those reinforcements were at least 2 months away, and Vivian had no intention of giving her that long. Vivian had won over 2/3 of the barony's vassals. She had legal inheritance rights, military superiority, and momentum. The city was surrounded. She'd picked up some useful people along the way. A young knight named Lane, 21 years old, from a family that had served the Sun House for centuries. The stepmother had kicked him to a border outpost 3 years ago to get rid of him. The moment he heard the real heir was back, he packed up and knelt before Vivian. She told him straight, "After we win, your family gets elevated to hereditary baron with land." He stayed. Completely loyal, she paid too well. There was also Rod, a level 9 family knight, another one the stepmother had pushed aside. He ran the cavalry, 800 riders, all under control, commanded by the 6 knights I'd given Vivian back at the tribe. It was pouring rain when intelligence came from inside the city. The eastern wall along the river was weakest. The mercenaries were concentrated at the west and north gates. Some of the south gate city guard were ready to switch sides. And the mercenary vice captain had put a price on his own boss's head. 300 gold coins for the mercenary Captain Bartle. Vivian handled it like she'd been doing this her whole life. Accept the terms. Anyone who opens the gates gets 3 months extra pay. 300 gold for Bartle. Tell General Olsen to approve it himself. Don't bother asking me. The moment Bartle dies, announce that mercenaries who surrender get severance pay and can go home. Anyone still fighting after that gets no mercy. Lane brought her a baked pine cake. Rod walked in, saw it, and gave Lane a look. "Didn't you bring her honey cake yesterday? What exactly are you here for?" Lane kept his composure. A vassal looking after his liege. Perfectly normal. Vivian broke the cake in half, gave 1 piece to Rod, ate the other herself. Then she asked about the cavalry. 800 riders, fully assembled, all 6 of my contracted knights commanding a squad each. She walked to the tent entrance and stared at Sin City through the rain. That city held a lot of memories. The stepmother announcing the arranged marriage from the council hall steps, smiling. The old guard captain bowing to her for the last time, promising the trip north would be safe. The nobles who once lined up to toast her father, swearing they'd follow his daughter just the same, now hiding behind the woman who stole everything. She pointed through the rain at the city walls. 3 days. I want to be standing in that council hall. She turned to Lane. Handle the battle plans. After we win, every promise gets kept. She paused. Also, your cake was too dry. More honey next time. Lane blinked, then smiled, pressed his fist to his chest, and bowed. As you command, my lady. He walked into the rain with lighter steps than when he'd arrived. Inside Sin City, Vivian's stepmother Eileen stood at her window drinking wine, watching the rain, and running out of options. Vivian had nearly 4,000 troops outside, 800 cavalry, 3,000 infantry. The stepmother had 2,000 mercenaries and city guards, but they were crumbling. The Southgate garrison was ready to flip. The mercenary vice captain was secretly negotiating a price to kill his own boss. Eileen knew the truth nobody else did. She wasn't really waiting for the Northern Baron's reinforcements. That old fox would just wait for both sides to bleed each other dry, then march in and take everything. Her real plan was standing in the middle of her council hall wearing a black robe. A demon cultist, the kind every civilized nation swears to destroy. They worship demons from the abyss, trading lives, sometimes entire worlds, for power. They've lurked in the continent's shadows for tens of thousands of years. The man pulled back his hood. Dark red hair, amber eyes with pupils halfway between human round and reptile slits, grayish skin with a fine net-like pattern on his neck and hands. A half-breed, part fire demon, part human. His price, 3 baronies worth of land on the edge of Sunset Forest, handed over to his cult. Eileen went pale. 3 baronies? Centuries of territory, never lost an inch, and you want me to give it to demon worshippers? The cultist smiled thinly. If the girl outside wins, this land goes with her name, not yours. You won't keep a single inch. You won't even keep your life. He was right, and she knew it. She was the outsider who married in. As long as Vivian lived, Every noble had a legitimate heir to rally behind. Eileen could only lose once. Vivian could lose 100 times and come back. She drained her wine and turned the glass upside down on the windowsill. Deal, the cultist bowed. A wise choice. Within 3 days, you will see our Lord's gift. The army outside will scatter in terror. He left behind a faint smell of sulfur. After he was gone, a man stepped from the shadows. Boar, early 30s, level 11 elite knight. Handsome, with a sword at his hip, its handle carved with a rose Eileen had given him 3 years ago. He was her lover. He'd watched the woman he loved marry the old Baron years ago, waited, and when the Baron finally died, came back to her side. You heard everything? Eileen said without turning. From what's the price onward? 3 baronies. You're generous. It's not mine to keep. If it can buy my life, why hold on to it? Or put his hand over hers on the windowsill. Can we trust that thing? Trust or not, do I have another choice? They stood together watching the ring. Everything depended on what happened next. Win, and they had a future. Lose, and none of it mattered. What Eileen didn't understand, what none of them understood yet, was that the piece of sunset forest she'd just sold to demon cultists sat right next to my territory. She'd just invited the worst kind of trouble to my doorstep. Vivian's attack went perfectly at first. The moment rain stopped, she gave the order. 3,000 infantry pushed toward the walls from multiple sides. Before the siege ladders even settled, the south gate swung open from inside. City guards switching sides, waving Vivian's troops in before they'd even taken off their garrison uniforms. Vivian raised her hand. Lane blew the cavalry horn. 800 riders charged down the southern slope, mud flying under hooves. Rod led the front. Lance pointed at the stepmother's banner above the gate. Tear it down. Everyone. Straight to the Baron's mansion. On the west wall, the mercenary Captain Bartle was commanding his men when his own vice-captain walked up behind him and drove a knife through the back of his neck. The blade came out through his throat. Bartle turned to stare at the man he'd trusted for over 10 years, but his vocal cords were destroyed. He slumped over the wall and died without a word. The vice-captain wiped the knife clean, pulled out a pre-prepared flag with the Sun family crest, and raised it high. Bartel's dead. Drop your weapons. Surrender gets triple pay. Anyone still fighting dies. The mercenaries looked at each other, then started throwing down their weapons one by one. They were hired swords. They follow the money. The cavalry rolled through the main streets unopposed. At every corner, nobles who'd been bowing to the stepmother weeks ago were now holding Sun family flags and cheering for Vivian. The rightful heir. We always waited for you. Vivian wanted to vomit behind her visor, but nodded politely at the loudest one. Thank you for your loyalty. I'll summon you after the battle. The man bowed, so deep his forehead almost hit his knees. He didn't catch the edge in her voice when she said, summon. None of these people could be trusted. But settling scores could wait. Right now she needed them quiet. The real accounting comes later, and she could afford to be patient. The cavalry turned the last corner. The Baron's mansion stood ahead, and there the stepmother had her last 200 personal guards, elite troops in full steel plate with the Burt family crest on their shields. 3 years of resources poured into this core force. They stood behind the mansion walls, silent and unafraid. Eileen stood on the tower in a dark red robe, makeup perfect, golden hair pinned up. Behind her stood Boar, her level 11 knight and lover, hand on his rose-carved sword. Vivian stopped in front of the mansion, flipped up her visor, and looked up. Eileen looked down with a faint smile. My dear daughter, you've grown since I last saw you crying on your knees, begging me not to send you to the Northern Baron. Do you think you've already won? Lane rode forward and pointed his sword at the wall. Eileen Burt, you harmed the rightful heir, seized power illegally, murdered loyal servants, conspired with foreign powers. Your charges are ready. Open the gates, and the Baroness may spare your life. Resist, and Eileen didn't even glance at him. She kept her eyes locked on Vivian and smiled, the kind of smile someone makes when they've been holding something back for a long time. Let me teach you one more lesson, dear daughter. Never assume you've won. She raised her right hand and made a small gesture toward the shadows of the surrounding alleys. More than a dozen black-robed figures emerged silently from different street corners. Hoods pulled low. A thick sulfur smell rolled through the air. Horses snorted nervously. Soldiers shifted uneasily. These were demon cultists, worshippers of abyssal demons, banned by every civilized nation, hunted by every king since the beginning of recorded history. Eileen had made a deal with them. 3 baronies worth of land near Sunset Forest in exchange for their help destroying Vivian's army. All at once, the robed figures drove their own fingers through their chests, through cloth, through skin, through bone. Their bodies began glowing like exposed magma. They chanted in demon tongue, every syllable making the air feel wrong, making ears ache, making the world itself seem to reject what was happening. The sound hit Vivian's brain like a hammer, but the tiny green mark on her forehead, my contract seal, pulsed with faint light and shielded her consciousness. Above the mansion, a blinding magic circle appeared in the sky. The air tore open. A blast of scorching heat poured from the rift, evaporating every raindrop, making the stone streets burn. The sulfur became overwhelming. The circle began to spin. Even the stepmother's elite guards stirred for the first time. Every living thing present felt a deep, instinctive revulsion, the world itself rejecting what was coming through that tear. One cultist threw back his hood, arms spread wide toward the sky, screaming with fanatic joy, "My lord, show your power. Let these ignorant humans witness the greatness of demons." The air around the rift twisted and warped. Sulfur choked the entire city. Leaves on street trees curled and browned. Rainwater on the cobblestones boiled into steam. The horses went mad, bucking, retreating, trying to flee the city no matter how hard their riders pulled the reins. Animals sense things humans can't, and every animal in that city knew something terrible was coming. Vivian stared at the shape forming inside the crack and went pale. A fire demon. Lane heard her. "What? A fire demon?" she repeated, knuckles white on her reins. "I saw illustrations at the Mage Academy in the capital. Fire demons are native to the deepest abyssal layers. As a race, they rival dragons. An adult fire demon is at minimum master rank. The stronger ones are legendary. Many abyssal layer lords are fire demons. They're one of the true apex races of the abyss." She couldn't understand how it was possible. According to legendary mages' research, beings like fire demons shouldn't be able to enter the main world at all, unless something very unusual was done. The rift tore wider. A 4-fingered claw reached out, joints covered in hooked bone spurs, magma light pulsing through cracks in its skin. It gripped the edge and ripped the opening apart. The demon, Guri, for short, squeezed through and landed. The cobblestones cracked outward from the impact in a dozen lines. He stood nearly 4 meters tall. His skin was a shell of cooled lava, cracked and glowing at the joints. Bone spikes ran along his spine. His head was somewhere between a bull and a human, with 2 curving horns like closing sickles. No lips, fangs exposed, dark red sparks leaking from between his teeth with every breath. He looked around and inhaled deeply. The main plane, his voice shook with excitement. "Finally, back again. Hundreds of years. That cursed elf empress. This time I will kill you." Up on the tower, Eileen's mouth curved into a smile. She didn't know what layer of the abyss this thing came from and didn't care. It was clearly stronger than anything she'd ever seen. That was enough. Win first, morality later. Boar beside her was already calculating escape routes. How far to the hidden passage behind the tower? How many seconds to grab her and jump? The cultists crawled toward Guri and prostrated themselves on the scorching stones, skin burning, not caring. The lead cultist trembled with ecstasy. "Great Guribastamorl, flame of the abyss, your slaves paved your path with their souls and blood. Praise you. Praise the abyss." Guri looked down at them the way a butcher looks at meat on a cutting board. He bent down, pinched the lead cultist around the waist with 2 fingers, and lifted him into the air. The cultist's face went from fanatic to overjoyed. He was being raised toward his god. He thought he was being blessed. Guri opened his mouth and bit him in half. The top half went down. The bottom half dropped to the cracked stones with a wet thud. Blood splashed across the other prostrate cultists. The entire street went silent. Then the first person vomited, a young soldier on the mansion wall. His spear clattered to the ground, and he doubled over the battlements. Nobody laughed. Half the elite guards were sheet white, hands shaking, some stepping backward involuntarily. They were trained soldiers, but nobody had trained them for a demon eating people like snacks. Vivian sat on her horse, face drained of color, forcing her stomach to stay put through sheer willpower. Behind her, everyone except the hardest veterans was throwing up. Lane was one of the exceptions. He looked at Vivian, waiting for orders. But for the first time since she'd returned to the barony, he saw her hesitate. She'd given every order cleanly until now. But her master was 1,000 miles away asleep, and her forces, 800 cavalry, 3,000 infantry, a dozen level 8 and 9 knights, suddenly seemed very small in front of this thing. Gyuri finished swallowing, looked down at the remaining cultists still face down on the burning stones, and made a satisfied sound. You summoned me. Good. He bent down again, reaching for another one. Now offer me more of your flesh. Gyuri ate the cultists one by one. Every single one wore an expression of ecstasy as they were lifted to his mouth. They believed being devoured was merging with their god. When he finished the last one, magma light pulsed through his chest, and he breathed out a wave of heat that scorched the stones black. He'd absorbed everything the cultists told him through their blood. Mother against daughter. He found it amusing. Humans say demons love killing each other, but you nobles aren't much different. No matter. This battlefield belongs to me now. He stomped one foot. A visible shockwave of heat exploded outward in every direction. Cobblestones flipped up, spewing dark red flames. Wooden window frames ignited instantly. Plaster walls cracked and peeled. One stomp turned an entire city block into an inferno. Vivian ordered a full retreat. No hesitation from the soldiers. They'd just watched a single footstep create a sea of fire. They pulled back toward the city gates, carrying wounded, dragging burned comrades. But the dozen level 8 and 9 knights stayed behind, channeling battle energy into their weapons, slicing apart tongues of flame that chased the retreating troops. Up on the tower, Boar had finally had enough. He grabbed Eileen and threw her over his shoulder. She was shrieking, half mad. Did you see? I summoned him. I won. I won. Her voice was shattered, nothing like the composed noblewoman she pretended to be. Boar didn't argue. He kicked open a hidden door and ran down the escape tunnel. He didn't care who won the war. He only wanted her alive. Gyuri walked toward the knights. Each stride covered 2 body lengths, every footprint melting stone into lava. He slapped a burning wall apart casually and sent the rubble flying at the knights. One level 8 knight blocked with his shield. The impact launched him into the opposite wall, shield bent into an unnatural curve. He coughed blood, but stood back up, battle energy still burning. The knights formed a human wall across the burning street, connecting their battle energy into a barrier, blocking wave after wave of fire to buy time for the soldiers behind them. Gyuri looked at them the way you look at ants. He raised his right claw and pushed the air casually. A shockwave ripped down the center of the street, carving a black trench through the cobblestones. Knights caught in its path were flung like dolls. Some punched through burning walls. Some tumbled through the air before crashing down, their energy shield shattered. Then Boar appeared at the far end of the street, blocking the road to Vivian. He'd changed his mind about running. Even if he got Eileen away, she'd never survive what came after. Better to fight here, earn Vivian's mercy for Eileen with his life. He dropped to one knee toward Vivian's direction. Please, Lady Vivian. She is your mother in name. Spare her life. In return, I offer everything I have. Without waiting for an answer, he turned, drew his sword, and charged Gyuri. Level 11 elite knight battle energy wrapped him in pale gold light. The worn rose on his sword hilt seemed to bloom one last time. Vivian watched his back without expression. A knight brought the captured Eileen before her, still babbling, half insane. Vivian didn't look at her stepmother. Lock her up. After the battle, I will judge her personally. She hadn't accepted Boar's plea, but she understood the politics. The stepmother had to be judged by the legitimate heir, not killed by a demon. That's not mercy, that's procedure. And if Boar's sacrifice proved useful, maybe she'd let Eileen live. Death sentence avoided, but a lifetime of punishment guaranteed. All knights, listen. Vivian drew her sword and pointed it at Gyuri. This is our land. I don't care if he's a fire demon or anything else. He doesn't get to do this here. Everyone who can still move, follow me. The surviving knights crawled from rubble and fire. Over a dozen level 8 and 9 warriors plus level 11 Boar charged a level 16 master rank fire demon head-on. Gyuri didn't even bother raising his claws. He let them reach him, let their swords scrape shallow marks on his lava shell skin, then backhanded them away one at a time. Each knight flew through the air and crashed into ruins. Bor flanked him and drove his sword into a crack in the demon's side armor. Giri looked down at the little blade stuck between his ribs, then looked at Bor. "You're slightly more interesting than the others." Then he punched Bor in the chest. The knight flew 15 meters, bounced, rolled, and stopped. His armor had a fist-shaped dent. His energy shield was gone. He was conscious but couldn't stand. His fingers still gripped his sword. The rose on the handle now stained red with blood. Giri plucked the sword from his side, pinched it between two fingers, and snapped it like a dry twig. Then he turned toward the shadows at the end of the street. "Interesting yet boring. Humans," he raised his voice. "Old man, how much longer are you going to sit there watching?" Silence. Then a soft sigh. "So you noticed me after all." A figure stepped from the shadows. A gray-haired old man in plain gray clothes, a simple sword at his hip. Deep wrinkles, but a perfectly straight back. His eyes crossed the burning street and settled on Giri with absolute calm. This was Whittle, level 17 human swordsman. Vivian's great-great-grandfather. The Sun family's hidden guardian. Giri's eyes lit up. Finally, prey worth taking seriously. Whittle, Vivian's great-great-grandfather, a level 17 swordsman and the Sin family's hidden guardian, stepped out of the shadows. Gray hair, plain clothes, a simple sword worn smooth from decades of use. "Didn't plan on coming out," he said to Giri. "Thought it was just a family power struggle. Didn't expect someone to summon something like you." He drew his sword. No metallic scrape, just a single pure ring. Then he vanished. Flash step. He crossed dozens of paces in an instant and appeared in front of Giri, sword wrapping battle energy and sword intent, aimed straight at the demon's head. Giri didn't dodge. He raised his arm. The blade hit and sank in half an inch. Whittle's full power, enough to kill or cripple anything at his level, stopped there. Giri's arm didn't move. Burning blood dripped from the cut and sizzled holes in the stone below. Giri looked at the sword embedded in his arm. Then he flicked it, and a shockwave of heat blasted Whittle away, sword and all. The old man flipped in the air and landed on his feet, cracking the cobblestones as he absorbed the force. "That all you've got, old man?" Giri's wound sealed in seconds. "I smell elf blood in you. And in that girl over there, thin, but much sweeter than ordinary humans." Whittle didn't respond. He gripped his sword again and flash-stepped to Giri's flank, slashing upward from below. Giri answered with his signature weapon, a fire whip, woven from pure abyssal flame, extending from his palm in a blazing arc that forced Whittle back. The fire whip. Whittle had read about it in family records. An extension of the demon's body and will. One hit would kill him outright. The text said Giri once whipped an elven legendary to death on a battlefield and savored the screams for centuries. Giri charged. 4 meters of demon moving impossibly fast, fire whip sealing the escape route, lava-wrapped fist aimed at Whittle's chest. Whittle raised his sword and formed a battle energy shield. Giri's fist shattered it instantly and sent the old man flying through a burning wall. Rubble and sparks erupted. Whittle climbed out again, shaking, gray hair covered in ash, but sword still in hand. Then Giri turned toward Vivian. "That girl, your great-great-granddaughter? The elf blood is faint, but she smells much better than regular humans." He lunged at her. For meters of fire demon crossing dozens of meters of street in seconds. Vivian was directing the last civilian evacuation. She turned and Giri was already 10 steps away. She grabbed her staff, but there was no time for any spell. Lane threw himself in front of her without hesitation. Several other knights charged alongside him, battle energy linked together, swords crossing to form a barrier. Giri's fist hit the barrier like a hammer hitting glass. Energy shattered, knights went flying, blood spraying. Lane took the worst of it, slammed into the wall behind Vivian, blood pouring from his mouth, sliding down to sit in the rubble. Alive, but barely. Those few seconds were enough. Whittle appeared in front of Vivian again. Twice knocked down, twice back up. Not easy for a man over 200 years old. But his sword was still in his hand and still burning gold. He glanced back at Vivian with the tone of an elder speaking to a promising grandchild. "Vivian, fall back. Leave this to me." He turned and poured every drop of his level 17 battle energy into one strike. Giri tilted his head. "You're more fun than those knights. But that's all you are. You're too weak. Not a level problem, a species problem. Your lives are too short, your body's too fragile. I've lived thousands of years in the abyss. I've fought the elf empress herself, a human who hasn't even lived 200 years. What can you possibly do against me? Whittle didn't answer. His grip said everything. They clashed. Every collision sent visible shockwaves rippling outward. Houses collapsed. Streets became trenches. A clock tower caught fire, and its giant bronze bell crashed into the square with a final deep toll. The entire district groaned under their battle. Citizens fled burning homes. Some were caught by stray shockwaves and simply vanished. No time to scream. People called out names in the ruins. Others dug through rubble for buried children. Vivian stood at the rear of the retreat and watched all of it. Her great-great-grandfather, the strongest person in her family, was being pushed back again and again. The gap between human and fire demon wasn't something 1 or 2 levels could bridge. She watched civilians die in the crossfire. She watched her future city burn. She watched her knights fall one after another into the wreckage. She commanded nearly 4,000 soldiers, had over a dozen high-level knights willing to die for her, but she herself was only level 3. She couldn't survive a single exchange with that demon. Then she remembered the dragon blood. The bead I'd given her before she left. A drop of my heart blood sealed in a translucent shell, strung on a chain around her neck. She pulled it out. The bead glowed green in the firelight, radiating a vitality that drew every living eye. She gripped it tight. Her expression changed. The look of someone cornered, placing every last chip on a single card. The city burned behind Viridian Asquedributon, and her great-great-grandfather tore the streets apart. Buildings collapsed. Smoke turned the sky dark. Civilians screamed in the ruins. Her city, the land her father left her, being destroyed right in front of her while she could do nothing. A level 3 mage apprentice who couldn't survive 1 second against that demon. She looked at the dragon blood bead in her palm. Her last card. Guri kicked Whittle away again. The old swordsman blocked with his blade, but still flew backward, then turned and stared at the green bead in Vivian's hand. His eyes locked onto it. He was a fire demon who'd lived thousands of years in the abyss, seen every treasure there is. But this blood was different. It carried a power opposite to the abyss's nature of destruction, something equally ancient. He didn't know what it was, but he knew that if he could swallow it and find its source, he could rise from a mere abyssal lord to contend for the rank of Abyss King. He tried bargaining. Give me that blood, human girl. I'll swear a deep abyss oath to withdraw, never return to your territory. You keep your title, rebuild your city, save your people. 1 bead of blood for all of that. Fair trade. He sounded sincere. More sincere than most human merchants. Vivian listened. Then she smiled, the kind of smile you make when you've heard something so absurd it's actually funny. Do you think I'm 3 years old, demon? What sane person would trust a demon's word? She paused. A deep abyss demon's credit rating. In the human world, you couldn't borrow a single copper coin. Then she popped the bead into her mouth, bit through the shell, and swallowed. My blood went down her throat, carrying something I'd never shown her, the power of abundance. The force I'd brought from another world, from another life, independent of any god system in this world. Giri's pupils blew wide. But he didn't panic. Thousands of years of survival taught him when to act. His plan was simple. Kill the old man fast, then catch the girl before the blood fully merged with her body. Interrogate her about the blood's source, and swallow her whole. Blood, power, and all. A demon's stomach can handle anything. He turned on Whittle with real killing intent now. No more playing. His fire whip swept in waves that sealed every escape angle. His lava-coated fist crashed into Whittle's sword. The blade screamed and cracked. Whittle flew again, legs carving trenches in the stone when he landed, hands shaking, battle energy more than half spent, breathing ragged. But his great-great-granddaughter was 50 steps behind him. He couldn't retreat. His old friends would laugh him into the grave. And he could feel it. Something strange and powerful was building inside Vivian. A swordsman's instinct told him that might be their only chance. The dragon blood hit Vivian's heart first. It pulsed outward through every vein, reforging her blood vessels as it went. Her heart clenched, then exploded with power she'd never felt. Her pupils flickered wildly between human round and dragon slit with each wave of agony. But she didn't grow wings. No scales appeared. Her transformation wasn't like my other vassals. The abundance power inside my blood intertwined with the dragon blood, restraining each other, forming a balance even I might not have predicted. She was walking a different path. She knelt on the burning stones, body arched in pain, fingers clawing into the cracks, fingertips burning and bleeding. Her mind went blank except for one thought buried since she was 13, ripped out when her father died, replanted when she was hunted through Sunset Forest. I will be strong. I refuse to be weak. I will control my own fate. I will protect my people. I will keep my promise to him. Far away in Sunset Forest, deep inside my sealed vine palace, my eyes snapped open in the darkness. My body was still mid-transformation, my consciousness still submerged in deep sleep. But one thread had been plucked, the contract line tied to a 17-year-old girl's soul, transmitting an intense energy surge. Dragon blood activation. But alongside it, something unexpected. Not the usual vassal conversion. Instead, a power I knew intimately was rising in that distant city. Abundance. She'd awakened it. She'd found the path. I closed my eyes and sank back into the dark. Because I knew, once someone steps onto that path, dying becomes very, very difficult. Nothing to worry about. As for whether she could threaten me with that power, please. I am the source of abundance in this world. Anyone who channels it draws from me, and can never exceed my control. I wasn't worried about someone wielding it. I was worried nobody ever would. Now Vivian had proven it was possible. When I wake up, there will be new things to try. Hundreds of miles away, in the middle of my deep sleep, I felt the contract thread vibrate for just an instant. I sent a brief pulse through it, something like, "I see you. Go ahead." Then I pulled back and sank into the dark again. What I didn't tell her, and what she couldn't know, was how pleased I was. She'd awakened abundance. My power, from my previous life, carried through my dragon blood into a 17-year-old human girl. The first person in this world besides me to walk that path. Vivian bit down through the pain and swallowed her screams. Every thought in her head was the same. Drive the demon out. Save her people. Honor my trust. Honor the knights who threw themselves in front of her. Each one of those thoughts, each selfless, protecting impulse, fed the power rising inside her. That's how abundance works. It grows from the desire to give, to protect, to nurture, not from selfishness, not from greed, from caring about others. That's why it chose her. Giri had Whittle by the head, dangling him in the air, about to crush his skull. The old swordsman's battle energy was nearly gone, his sword cracked and fallen to the ground. Then Giri stopped. He felt it. Every scrap of energy in the area was tilting toward one point. He turned. His demon eyes saw something he couldn't understand. Vivian's power was exploding upward. Level 3 to 13 in minutes, and still climbing. Giri had lived thousands of years in the abyss and seen plenty of strong beings. He'd never seen anything go from ant to near master in a quarter of an hour with no sign of stopping. Then came the part that truly shook him. Green energy spread outward from Vivian in every direction, and wherever it touched ground that had been tainted by Giri's abyssal presence, the corruption dissolved. Not suppressed, dissolved. Even holy light from the celestial temples can only push back abyssal energy. This girl was erasing it. Giri's grip on Whittle loosened for just a fraction of a second. That was enough. The old swordsman's sword flew back to his hand on its own. He slashed Giri's wrist, kicked off the demon's chest, and launched himself free. He landed stumbling but standing, gasping, sword propped against the ground. Then a hand touched his shoulder. Vivian had walked up beside him. Warmth flowed from her palm into his body, not just healing the battle damage, but repairing old injuries and chronic problems he'd carried for decades. In a few breaths, he was better than he'd been at the start of the fight, better than he'd been in years. He stared at her. He'd seen high-level healing magic. He'd seen temple archbishops perform divine miracles. Nothing came close to this effortless, this complete. It was like watching a real god work. "This is all a gift from that Lord," Vivian said simply, as if stating something that needed no explanation. Whittle didn't fully understand who that Lord was, but he made a silent vow. Whatever this being needed in the future, he would answer. Vivian turned to face Giri. She raised both hands. The earth split open. Massive vines erupted from deep underground, each one thick as a tree trunk, surging upward like giant serpents waking from sleep. They positioned themselves with perfect precision, sealing every escape route around Giri. The demon lashed out with his fire whip, wrapping it around the nearest vine. Abyssal flame roared over the surface, trying to burn it to ash. The vine glowed once. Then it absorbed the fire. It used the demon's own flame as fuel to grow faster, completely unharmed, and kept coming. Panic flickered in Giri's eyes for the first time. His fire whip, his signature weapon, the thing he'd used to kill an elven legendary centuries ago, was useless. His flames were a form of abyssal power, and these vines fed on abyssal power. Everything was backwards. The vines didn't fear fire, they ate it. Dozens more vines surged toward him from every direction. He had no answer for them. Vivian stood at the center of the vine forest, energy pouring into her from the world itself. This was the world's reward, a gift to anyone who stands against the abyss to protect what lives. Today, this land was under her protection. Round 2 had begun. The battle turned into Giri's worst nightmare. Whittle would flash step through gaps in the vines, land a sword strike on the demon, then retreat before the fire whip could catch him. Every time Giri came close to finishing the old man, Vivian's vines and tree soldiers swarmed from every direction, tangling the demon's limbs. Then she'd send a pulse of green light to Whittle, and in a few breaths his wounds would close and his battle energy would refill completely. He'd flash back and fresh as morning, and Vivian's power showed no sign of running out. Energy kept flowing into her from the world itself, endlessly. Giri started wondering if she was the world's secret child. The demon grew desperate. He was only a clone. His real body sat somewhere deep in the abyss. This clone's power supply was finite, and the world's rejection doubled every attack's cost. Each swing of his fire whip drained him faster than it should have. When he started glancing toward the city gates, Whittle caught it immediately. He's trying to run. Hold him. Vivian raised both hands and sealed every exit with walls of vines and tree soldiers. Giri smashed through one wave. Another grew behind it. He broke left toward the gate. A dozen vines grabbed him. He tore them off. Whittle's sword landed in the same rib wound for the third time, widening it further. This went on for 3 full days. 3 days of continuous fighting in a burning city. Vivian's vines came in waves that never tired. Whittle never needed to rest. Every time his energy dropped halfway, Vivian topped him off with abundance power. The old swordsman fought for 72 hours straight without stopping once. Giri's fire whip shrank by a third. His flames flickered instead of blazing. His wounds accumulated. Whittle kept hitting the same spots, reopening them faster than the demon could seal them with magma. On the 3rd evening, Giri sensed 3 powerful presences closing in fast. The strongest came from the capital, heavy and immovable as a mountain. That was the shield of the principality, a level 19 shield warrior with ancient giant blood. The other 2 came from north and south. The Wolf of the North, a level 16 berserker, and the Hammer of Molten Rock, a level 16 dwarf-blooded warrior. Whittle had sent emergency signal runes the moment Giri appeared. 3 runes to 3 directions, all activated at once. Calling for help against something you can't beat alone isn't shameful, it's smart. Giri knew it was over. 3 fresh fighters joining a battle he was already losing. No escape possible. He looked at Vivian, then at the old swordsman who'd been fighting him for 3 straight days. These 2 humans, a girl and an old man, had pinned him down and ground him to nothing. Then he made his last move. He pulled his fire whip back into his body, formed a massive flame greatsword in both hands, and drove it straight into the ground. The earth shattered. For miles in every direction, the ground cracked into an irregular web. Dark red magma erupted from deep below. Air twisted with heat. Burning ruins melted. Stone went soft. The entire area began sinking. Scorching World Ring, a technique powered by a sliver of his real body's legendary rank power, forced into the clone's magic core far beyond safe limits. Everything within miles was being dragged into a lake of lava. Streets, rubble, the broken fountain statue, the crater where the bell tower fell, all swallowed by magma, outlines erased. A massive mushroom cloud of molten rock rose from the city center, painting the evening sky an ominous dark red. The clone's magic core nearly shattered from the strain. The 3 reinforcements arrived at the edge of the devastation simultaneously. The shield of the principality stood at the front, enormous build, holding a tower shield taller than himself, covered in alchemical runes. Where the city center had been, there was now only a sea of glowing orange and dark red lava. The Wolf of the North and the Hammer of Molten Rock stood at opposite edges, staring in silence. Nobody spoke. The magma still bubbled. Occasionally, the tip of the clock tower poked above the surface for a moment, then sank slowly, like a drowning man's last reach. At the very center, in the deepest part of the lava, nothing was visible at all. The three reinforcements arrived at the edge of what used to be Sin City and found a lake of lava where the city center had been. Streets, buildings, the Baron's mansion, all gone. Only a stub of city wall remained at the edge. The shield of the principality, Gur, level 19, ancient giant blood, stood at the front with his massive rune-covered shield. Behind him, the Wolf of the North, Ragnar, level 16 berserker, and the Hammer of Molten Rock, Brock, level 16 dwarf-blooded warrior. Ragnar studied the devastation. What did Whittle's family mess with? This kind of power is near legendary. Gur identified it immediately. Scorching World Ring, a fire demon's signature kill move. Detonates abyssal power centered on itself, turns everything within hundreds of meters to lava. Below legendary rank, theoretically nobody survives. Ragnar cracked a grim smile. Well, it's not my territory. Sin Barony's having a bad day. Though if Whittle's dead, I wouldn't mind picking up a few of his northern lands. Then a sound came from the lava's depths. A dying, rasping growl. At the core of the molten lake, Giri knelt broken. His fire main was almost entirely out. His clone body was ruined, abyssal power completely drained. The clone was finished. Then footsteps. A green glow rising through the dark red magma. Vivian and Whittle walked out of the light. Their clothes were scorched and torn, but underneath, not a scratch. Not even a scar. Giri's eyes went wide. He'd watched the lava swallow them. He'd felt their life signs nearly vanish. A strike carrying a sliver of his true body's legendary power. Below legendary, no one should survive. But they had. When the Scorching World Ring hit, Vivian was engulfed and nearly died. The abundance power inside her activated on its own and dragged her back from death's edge. The moment she opened her eyes, she reached for Whittle, barely a breath left in him, and poured abundance into his body, pulling him back too. But Whittle paid a price. He had no abundance of his own. Giri's attack had burned away most of his life essence. My power could heal his wounds, but couldn't replace what was burned. From now on, he'd need Vivian to regularly replenish his life force, or he'd slowly wither like a leaking barrel. You survived my Scorching World Ring unharmed, Giri rasped. Impossible. Below legendary, no one lives. No one. Vivian's voice was perfectly calm. A mere fire demon. How could you understand my master's power? Compared to my master, you are dust on the ground, and he is the sun in the sky. There is no comparison. Giri froze. Then he laughed, pure fury dressed as laughter. Dust and sun. Him? Girabast Immoral, legendary fire demon lord, veteran of the last abyssal invasion, killer of 2 legendaries, the demon whose fire whip slew a dwarven prince, whose Scorching World Ring melted an elven war tree. A teenage girl was telling him he was dirt compared to her master? Humiliation burned away his last shred of reason. If he was going to die, he'd take them with him. His body began to swell. The final reserve of power surged from his core. White-hot light burst from every crack in his skin. Immolation, a fire demon's death technique. Core self-destruct. Drag everything nearby into oblivion. At the lake's edge, Ger's face changed. He grabbed Ragnar and Brock, yanked them backward, and threw his giant shield up in front of all 3. Another explosion tore from the lake's center. Orange fire shot skyward, lava rained down in every direction. But this blast was smaller than the first. Giri's clone had nothing left. Even his self-destruct was weakened. When the shockwave faded, sulfur and cooling lava choked the air. Surviving soldiers and civilians stood at the lake's edge. Escapees from the city, troops from outside the walls, surrendered guards and mercenaries, all staring at the smoking crater in silence. Then 2 sets of footsteps came from inside the fire. Vivian and Whittle walked out of the molten lake a second time. Clothes covered in ash and burn holes, but their bodies untouched. The first soldier knelt. Then another. Then dozens. Then hundreds. City guards, mercenary deserters, noble retainers, regular infantry, all kneeling on the same scorched earth, facing the same direction. Gur set his giant shield aside, dropped to one knee, pressed his fist to his chest, and bowed to Viridian. A level 19 warrior, the principality's strongest guardian, paying respect to the girl who'd held a fire demon for 3 days and walked out of its death twice. Ragnar and Brock looked at each other, set their weapons down, and knelt too. The Wolf of the North and the Hammer of Molten Rock, 2 of the strongest fighters in the realm, bowing to a teenager who'd walked out of hell. Viridian walked out of the lava lake with Whittle behind her. The old swordsman held Guri's gray-black, severed head in one hand and half a sword hilt in the other. His blade of decades had shattered in the final explosion. Viridian's clothes were burned to rags, but underneath, her skin was flawless. What neither of them noticed yet was the faint dark red mark on both their chests, Guri's parting gift. In the instant his cord detonated, 2 nearly invisible threads of dark energy shot out and burrowed into them both. A permanent tracking curse, branded in a demon lord's name. From now on, any cultist who worships Guri will sense that mark if they get close enough. They'll come like sharks smelling blood, relentless, suicidal. Worse, if Viridian or Whittle ever step into any plane that has contact with the abyss, Guri's real body will track them down personally. Not a clone. The actual legendary fire demon lord who's killed multiple legendaries over thousands of years. That's demons for you. He traded his clone's total destruction for a chance at eternal revenge. Petty to the bone. Viridian stopped at the edge of the lava lake, took the demon's head from Whittle, and raised it high above her. Tens of thousands of people, soldiers, citizens, nobles, mercenaries, knelt on the scorched ground before her. I am Viridian's son, rightful blood of the Sun Baron house. Today I claim the 21st generation barony. This catastrophe, the invasion, the demon, was caused by a usurper who betrayed family law and invited abyssal evil onto our land. But I stand here now, with this demon's head as proof. From today, I am the sole lawful ruler of the Sun Barony. All remnants of rebellion will be settled. The broken city will be rebuilt. The scattered people will be protected. No noble council vote. No royal charter. No bishop's blessing. Just a teenage girl in burned rags holding a fire demon's skull over a lake of lava. That was her credential, and it was worth more than any piece of paper. Anyone who disagreed was welcome to go kill their own demon. The 6 contracted knights responded first, then Lane and Rod and all of Viridian's sworn knights, then her soldiers, then the rescued citizens. Finally, the surrendered city guards, the mercenary turncoats, the noble retainers. Tens of thousands, all hailing the same name. Gur, the shield of the principality, watched it all, exchanged glances with Ragnar and Brock. Ragnar was staring at the demon head with eyes like saucers, muttering something that looked like, "That really is a damn fire demon." Brock just grunted. Gur stepped forward. "In the name of the royal house, I recognize your title. Viridian's son, 21st Baron of the Sun Barony." He paused, then continued. "In recognition of the Sun family's outstanding service during this demonic invasion, the royal house grants the Sun Barony the legal right to expand westward and the authority to appoint and dismiss all nobles below Viscount rank. Either reward alone would make the other 3 barons green with envy." Westward expansion meant Viridian could push her borders all the way to Sunset Forest's edge, every unclaimed patch of wilderness, every mine, every clearing, without needing royal approval. The appointment authority meant she could promote or remove her own lesser nobles without waiting for the capital's slow bureaucracy. In the principality's history, that kind of power was reserved for royal blood. Giving it to a border baron was a first. Nobody objected. Not because they didn't want to, because they knew better. The cheering wouldn't stop. Citizens screamed her name. Soldiers beat sword hilts against shields. Nobles bowed, so deep some nearly folded in half. Hard to tell if they were genuinely moved or desperately making up for backing the wrong side. Viridian stood at the center of it all, demon skull still in hand, looking west towards Sunset Forest. She smiled the proper smile, nodded to the crowd, gestured for kneeling knights to rise, said the right words to the right people. But inside, she had only one thought. "Thank you, my dragon lord." After the battle, the 3 strongest fighters in the principality each came to speak with Viridian privately. Gur, The shield told her she'd done well. He didn't ask about her, master. Just said that every strong person has secrets, and if she ever needed the principality's support, they'd remember today. Ragnar, the wolf, was more blunt. What are you doing with that head? If you hang it on the gate, hang it high so dogs can't grab it. Vivian told him she'd have it made into a specimen for her new council hall. The Northern Baron is welcome to visit any time. Ragnar laughed hard and told Whittle his great-great-granddaughter was more interesting than he was. Brock, the hammer, looked up at her. He was half a head shorter and said his family owed her. If that demon had established itself, his mines would have been next. He offered her iron, weapons, and ore at 80% market price. They shook hands and he left. What nobody noticed yet were the faint dark red marks on Vivian's and Whittle's chests. Guri's final revenge. In the instant his core exploded, two invisible threads of dark energy burrowed into them both. A permanent tracking curse in a demon lord's name. Any cultist who worships Guri will sense them if they get close enough and come hunting. Relentless, suicidal. Worse, if either of them ever enters a plane connected to the abyss, Guri's real body will follow the mark and come personally. Not a clone. The actual legendary lord. That's how demons operate. Trade a clone's destruction for eternal revenge. Then came the trial. Eileen was dragged in by two guards. She was broken, hair tangled, drool on her chin, pupils unfocused, mumbling the same words over and over. I summoned him. I won. I won. A priest from the capital examined her. A combination of the cultist's mind corruption spells and prolonged exposure to the demon's abyssal aura had shattered her sanity. She couldn't think straight anymore. She was finished as a political figure. Vivian studied her stepmother for a long time, calculating, not personal revenge, but what served the barony best. Killing her would feel good, but produce nothing useful. And Boar, the level 11 knight, was still alive. Some retreating soldiers had dragged him out. An 11-level knight was worth trading one moment of satisfaction for his permanent loyalty. Of course, he'd have to sign a master-servant contract afterward. Eileen Bird, Vivian said, you conspired with abyssal cultists, summoned a fire demon onto our land, turned Sin City to lava, and killed thousands. Each charge deserves death 10 times over. But I won't kill you. She stripped Eileen of everything, titles, positions, property, and sentenced her to permanent imprisonment in a guarded estate. No visitors without Vivian's permission. Never allowed to leave. This isn't mercy. Killing you now would be too easy. Life. Wake up every day remembering what you lost. Fall asleep every night remembering how you lost it. Whittle, leaning against a tent post, gave a very slight nod. For the family, this was the smartest move. No blood relative killing scandal. A clean resolution. Then the tent flap opened and soldiers carried in Boar on a stretcher, wrapped head to toe in bandages. He'd insisted on coming. Told them he'd crawl if they wouldn't carry him. He rolled off the stretcher onto his knees, forehead in the mud, reopened wounds bleeding through the bandages. Thank you for sparing her life. From today, this life belongs only to you. Vivian bent down and lifted him by the arm. I don't need you to die for me. Do your job well. You'll get what you deserve. His eyes went red. Nobody pointed it out. 5 days later, Vivian held the first awards ceremony. She honored every promise she'd made. Every title, every estate, every gold coin. Not one name forgotten. Not one payment delayed. Rod and the 6 contracted knights received noble titles. Rod became commander of the Baron's 1st Cavalry Regiment. The 6 became squadron captains. Lane walked up and Vivian handed him his papers. Hereditary Baron. Your estate includes the former Burt family manor and surrounding farmland. Your family is now permanent nobility of the Sun Barony. You earned this. He knelt, took the document, and after a long pause said, I fixed the honey cake recipe. More honey, less flour. I'll bring you some next time. Vivian's mouth twitched. I'll be waiting. Every surviving level 8 and 9 knight received noble titles with land and positions. Every promise kept, every debt paid. Word spread from the tent outward through the camp, louder and louder. Nobles who'd been hesitating about which side to support heard the news and immediately ripped their old family crests from their sleeves, replacing them with the Sun family's silver vine banner. 7 days after the battle, Vivian issued her first rebuilding order. The old Sin City was a lava scar now, so she picked a new site. Open high ground east of the ruins, near a river branch, bordered by a wild fruit forest, sitting right where the barony's main trade roads cross. The builders said the wall foundation alone would take 3 months. Vivian said she wouldn't need that long. She had everyone step back, took off her boots, and stood barefoot on the dirt. Then she knelt and pressed both hands into the earth. Abundance power poured from her palms into the ground. The first vine broke through at the exact point where the main street would meet the central plaza. Then hundreds more erupted along the city blueprint she held in her mind, weaving together into building frames, street patterns, plaza outlines. Mud giants rose from the earth along the wall foundation line, each one bigger than a full-grown ogre, and began pounding the soil flat with massive fists. The ground shook with every blow. Tree people walked out of the northern fruit forest, slow, enormous steps, and settled into position. Their trunks split into wall panels, their branches wove into roof frames, their roots spread underground as natural foundation reinforcement. A child who'd been crying stopped and tugged his mother's sleeve. "Mama, the mud people are building us houses." In a few hours, an entire city skeleton stood on the hilltop. Walls, streets, plaza, governor's mansion, barracks, residential quarter, market district. The details would take craftsmen weeks to fill in, but the bones of a city had grown from bare earth in a single day. One builder squatted by the wall he'd said would take 3 months, touched the compacted earth, and muttered, "My whole career was pointless." Then he took off his hat and bowed toward Vivian. The crowd knelt and cheered. "Long live Sin City! Long live Baroness Vivian!" A child rode his father's shoulders, waving wildly at her. She didn't turn around. She just raised her hand once, then walked away. She was too exhausted to even accept the cheering. News traveled faster than horses. That night, the northern baron's spies heard bards singing about a golden-haired girl who stood barefoot in mud and grew a city from the earth. The baron said nothing, just ordered trade tariffs halved for Sun barony caravans and filed the intelligence report in the deepest drawer of his desk. Brock the Hammer heard about it and quietly dropped his iron prices another 10% on top of the 80% he'd already promised. In the royal palace, Gur showed the king Vivian's award documents. The king asked one question. "This master she mentions, did you find out who it is?" Gur shook his head. "No. And her power doesn't match any known divine system in the royal archives." The king was quiet for a moment. Perhaps not knowing is better. Some beings are more trouble to know about. Intelligence reports spread to every power in the region: the northern baron, the dwarf kingdom, the southern fortress, small principalities to the east and beyond. Every report said the same thing. New Baroness Vivian Son, suspected apostle of an unknown powerful entity, capable of mass plant generation and earth manipulation, power source unknown, preliminary assessment, master, rank or above. Every report ended with the same note: recommend observation for now. But while everyone was singing her name, Vivian sat alone in her temporary study, staring at her hands. On her left hand, thin translucent ginkgo leaf patterns were emerging from her knuckles. They spread up her forearm, leaf shapes connected by fine vine-like lines. No pain, no discomfort. That was the frightening part. Her body wasn't rejecting this change. It was welcoming it, treating it as something that had always belonged. This was the price of abundance. 3 days of extreme combat pushed the power deep into her flesh. 2 near deaths from the scorching world ring and the immolation forced it into her very bones. Every time she should have died, abundance pulled her back. But power is never free. The more she used, the deeper it merged with her body. Building an entire city's framework consumed energy on a completely different scale from the battlefield. Every vine, every mud giant, every tree person was abundance directly reshaping the physical world. The cost: her own body was slowly becoming part of the power. It was reshaping her into a better vessel for itself. Right now it was just a few leaf patterns hidden under her sleeves. But what about next time? And the time after? At what point would she stop being herself? She pulled her sleeves down and covered the marks. Outside, the new city's vine skeleton glowed faintly green in the darkness, residual abundance still releasing. In the distance, the old lava lake had fully cooled into a black scar of volcanic rock across the land. She understood. The only person who could help her with this was me. She could feel through the contract that I was in deep sleep, still transforming. That brief moment when I'd opened my eyes and glanced at her through the thread, that was an accident, a half-conscious flicker. All she could do now was wait. And back in Sunset Forest, inside my sealed vine palace, my body continued to grow. What was happening in the Abundance tribe while I slept? That was a story still unfolding. It started with a night guard outside my sleeping hall. He noticed green light drifting out through the sealed vines, faint glowing particles that dissolved into the air. Then dozens of wildflowers sprouted at his feet, going from seed to full bloom in a few breaths. He grabbed his partner and ran. Grak was out at the Venom Pig Pen, his favorite place, 10 miles west of headquarters. He was watching the latest batch of piglets eat when the guard came crashing in, nearly falling into the pen, gasping. "The Dragon Lord's Hall. Something's happening." Grak sprinted back. By the time he arrived, the changes had gone full scale. Kobold miners sitting outside their barracks had patches of green scales growing on their arms. Dragon blood concentration was surging across the whole settlement, a mass ancestral awakening. One miner stared at his scaled-up friend, then checked himself. Nothing. He looked disappointed. The gnolls had it even wilder. Some level 2 hunters woke up with fur thick as bears, claws shiny black. One gnoll stared at his reflection in a water basin, touching his new fangs, mumbling, "Am I more handsome now?" A half-elf archer nearby rolled her eyes. But that archer had her own discovery. She could suddenly make plants move. It felt like the magical talent awakening the elders used to tell stories about. The settlement walls were covered in thick vines overnight, turning rough wooden fences into solid green barriers. Unknown flowers poked through watchtower posts. Outside the walls, what used to be scrubland had sprouted into groves of towering trees. Rare magical herbs covered the ground, silver-veined leaves that half-elf herbalists identified as some of the rarest species in their reference books. Plants that normally take years to find were now growing like weeds along the wall. All of this was my abundance power leaking out during my transformation, spilling into the land and everything living on it. Grak stood in the middle of the chaos and started giving orders like the veteran he is. Send runners east and west. Bring back Brew, Buck, GRA, and Ral. Tell them something's happening at headquarters. He pointed at the flowers and trees exploding around them. Tell them to come see for themselves. He set up protocols fast, everyone showing physical changes. Gather in the central clearing sorted by race. Kobolds left, gnolls right, half-elf center. Everyone normal keeps working. 1 mile exclusion zone around my hill, double patrols. Nobody enters without his say-so. Pig farm staff stays on site, no traveling back and forth. Any changes in the Venom pigs, report immediately. He was the most senior member at headquarters, the very first kobold to find me. With all 4 leaders away, he was acting chief, and nobody questioned it. Over the next 2 days, the changes kept spreading outward from my sleeping hall. Nature sprites appeared on the second day. Tiny things, smaller than a kobold's fist, half-transparent with thin leaf-shaped wings. They drifted out of blooming flowers and started tending the new magical herb patches, cleaning dewdrops off leaves with fingers thinner than needles, straightening bent petals. A kobold patrol guard tried to poke one with his finger. The sprite dodged, slapped his fingertip hard with both tiny hands, then huffed angrily and flew off, clutching a dewdrop bigger than its own body to another flower. The guard stared at his finger and laughed. Then came the tree people. They were born from ancient trees that had absorbed my leaking abundance power. Each one was different. Some were gentle. They'd help clear paths blocked by overgrown vines. Others were violent. One newborn tree person started swinging branches at everything in sight, launched a gnoll patrol guard through the air, and had to be chopped into firewood by Grak personally. He cursed the whole time he was cutting it down. My power was reshaping the land around me while I slept, turning the Abundance tribe's territory into something no one had ever seen before. Brew and Buck arrived first. The eastern mines weren't far. Brew stood at the gate and didn't recognize the place. The settlement he'd left behind had become a green kingdom. Vines covered the walls. Unknown flowers bloomed everywhere, and the air itself felt more alive. Both brothers noticed their own strength growing the closer they got to headquarters. Bottlenecks loosening, life force surging. Ral came the next evening from the western hunting grounds. Same experience. The nearer he got, the stronger he felt. When he saw rogue, tree people attacking patrols, he immediately put his Knoll hunters into the rotation. GRA arrived last on the third morning. The half-elf settlements were the most complex to organize before leaving. When she landed, everyone noticed her dragon wings had changed. Wheatstalk patterns now traced across the membranes. Grak briefed them all. The good news: most of the tribe's members were getting stronger. Kobolds were growing green scales as their dragon blood thickened. Gnolls were developing sharper fangs and claws. Some half-elves had awakened natural magic talent. Nature sprites, tiny transparent things with leaf-shaped wings, had appeared from blooming flowers and were tending the new magical herb gardens. Rare medicinal plants that normally take years to find were growing like weeds along the walls. The bad news started on the third day. Some individuals couldn't handle the power surge. Those with weak bodies or unstable minds began losing control. A kobold miner started talking to himself in a corner, eyes glowing empty green. Silver ginkgo leaves grew over his arms. Vines pushed from his fingernails. Green shoots sprouted from his back. When a friend tried to pull him up, the miner's mouth opened. Nothing inside but tangled flower petals, and he attacked. Ral's patrol pinned him down. Ral drove a spear through his heart without hesitating. The body kept growing plants even after death. They had to burn it. Everyone who watched the fire was quiet. They'd known that miner. Hard worker, never caused trouble. Just yesterday he'd been bragging about 3 new scales on his arm, saying maybe he'd become a warrior someday. More cases followed. A Gnoll hunter went berserk during patrol. Fangs grew through his own upper jaw. Fur turned dark green. He tore apart a caged creature and attacked his squad leader. Ral killed him personally. The blood that sprayed out was thick green sap that sprouted into a bush the instant it hit the ground. Ral looked at the bush, then told his hunters, "From now on, if you see a comrade losing control, don't hesitate. Don't be soft. If you're soft, you're the one who dies." The half-elves had casualties too. A young archer, the one who'd been joking days earlier about awakening magical talent, ran screaming from her barracks one night, her body wrapped in ginkgo leaves, only half her mouth still visible. She collapsed at the base of the wall, and plants erupted from her body, growing wildly until she became a small garden. When GRA reached her, the archer still had a flicker of consciousness. She turned her remaining half-mouth toward GRA and whispered, "Please, Lady GRA, kill me. It hurts so much." GRA said nothing. She placed one hand on the archer's forehead, drew her short sword with the other, and did what needed to be done. Then she plucked a green branch from the spot, handed it to the archer's companion, and said, "Plant this on her grave." The companion took it, put it in her quiver, and covered her face with both hands, crying. Brew and Buck handled the kobold failures more matter-of-factly. Brew carried his axe. Buck walked behind with a list. Who could be saved? Who couldn't? Those who couldn't were sent off with one swing. Bodies burned together. Buck noticed that after the ashes cooled, small silver flowers grew from them, a species he'd never seen before. The cleanup took 2 full days. By the second evening, all 4 leaders had counted their losses. The vast majority adapted successfully, locked potential awakened, ancestral traits surfacing, new talents blooming. But those whose minds weren't strong enough, whose bodies couldn't take the strain, became the price of this wave of transformation. Natural selection, survival of the fittest. My power offered an opportunity, but it didn't guarantee everyone would survive the gift. On the 5th evening, the 4 leaders met in a temporary command tent at the base of my hill. Grak stood at the entrance, mud-splattered, his old shoulder scar glowing faintly in the green light. Strangely, he himself hadn't changed much, just a vague feeling of being slightly different. "The master is still sleeping," Grak reported. The green light leaking from the hall had started to decrease. GRA looked up at the fading glow. "We don't know what's happening to the Dragon Lord. But our job is simple. Hold the Abundance tribe together." Brew stood up, the scales on his back shinier than ever. "Clean up everything we can. When the master wakes up, he should see a tribe in order, not a mess." Nobody argued. The 4 leaders went back to their posts. Inside the sealed hall on the hilltop, a massive heart beat slowly and powerfully. With every pulse, the Abundance tribe changed a little more. The creatures living within it were adapting in their own ways, some growing stronger, some falling to the power they couldn't contain. Opportunity and disaster, wrapped in the same green light. Which one you got depended entirely on yourself. The 4 leaders sat in the command tent with Grak's records spread across the table. Good news and bad news, all tangled together, all caused by power leaking from my sleeping body. GRA identified the core problem first. The beasts aren't coming for us. They're coming for the Master's power. To them it smells like honey. Brew's solution was straightforward. Kill however many show up. I'll pull half my forces from the eastern mines. But Buck saw deeper. The Master's power doesn't pick sides. It strengthens everything it touches, us and the beasts. The real question is how long this lasts. If it's short, we can handle forest beasts and small tribes. If it goes on long enough to attract things from the deep forest. He didn't finish the thought. Ral confirmed the trend. His gnolls had caught a level 6 ironhide rhino the day before, a creature that normally stays in the mid-forest and never comes to the outer edge. Even after they cut its legs off, it kept crawling toward headquarters. This isn't random, he said. It's only going to get worse. Right on cue, a bloodied gnoll scout burst into the tent. Over 100 beasts heading their way from the west, shadow wolves, iron tusk boars, stone-armored pythons, and unknown species. They were even fighting each other, but all moving in the same direction, toward my hill. They planned the defense quickly. Buck drew a map on the ground, pushed the defense line outward in layers, intercept beasts before they reached the walls, thin the numbers through multiple rings of resistance. Brew would pull 200 shield fighters from the eastern mines to hold the east. Ral would bring back half his western hunters for ambush and harassment in the dense forest. Gnolls fight best that way. GRA would call in 50 newly trained half-elf rangers from the Jurla settlement for ranged support on the open southern approach. Buck would handle the northern cliffside with traps and magic. Grak would stay inside managing internal order, logistics, medical care, and the venom pigs. Some of the boars had been acting strange since the changes started, eating twice as much, gaining weight rapidly. Could be good, could be bad. Someone had to watch them. Then Brew raised something more important than any patrol report. He pulled out a chart Buck had made while clearing the failed transformations. The pattern was unexpected. It wasn't about strength. A level 4 warrior lost control, while a level 3 miner right next to him grew beautiful scales and volunteered for tree-person cleanup duty. A strong gnoll who looked down on other races went berserk, while a weaker gnoll who got along with everyone stayed perfectly stable. 2 half-elf archers awakened the exact same vine magic. One lost control by day 3, fingers turning to wood. The other used it to bandage teammates' wounds with perfect precision. The difference wasn't power level. It was willpower. It was character. Those who could keep their minds steady, who cared about others, who had something worth holding on to, they adapted. Those who were selfish, unstable, or hollow inside got consumed by the power. GRA studied the chart carefully. This discovery is worth more than every patrol report combined. If mental stability is the key, we can't screen people for headquarters duty based on combat level alone. Buck proposed a simple test. Anyone assigned to headquarters must spend 1 full day at the base of my hill. No bad reactions, they stay. Mild symptoms that resolve on their own, 3 days observation. Signs of losing control, immediate transfer to outer posts. GRA added one more rule. This standard applies to everyone, not just regular soldiers. All 4 of us and every squad leader get tested regularly too. No exceptions. Everything is for the Dragon Lord. Everything is for the tribe. Nobody objected. After they split up, Grak headed toward the pig pen. He paused once, looking back at my hill. Part of him wanted to take the test too. He was the very first kobold to find me. Felt wrong not to try. Then he remembered the pigs hadn't been fed. He shook his head and kept walking. The Dragon Lord gave him that job personally. In his eyes, feeding those pigs was the most important mission in the world right now. Sky and earth may be vast, but feeding the pigs comes first. Ral left before dawn with a dozen of his fastest hunters. He needed to get to the western hunting grounds, pick up reinforcements, and get back as quickly as possible. On the way, he noticed the forest had changed again since his last trip. Thicker canopy, fatter vines, mushrooms twice their normal size. When he stopped at a stream to drink, his reflection surprised him. For nearly double its old thickness, fangs half an inch longer than before, curved and sharper. He touched the tip with a claw, then moved on. At the hunting camp, He'd sent word ahead to pull 200 hunters for headquarters defense. More than 200 volunteered. These were the younger generation, born and raised in the Abundance tribe, loyal to the bone. They'd heard about the changes at headquarters and saw it as a chance to get stronger. As for the risk of failing the transformation, in the wilderness, staying weak is worse than dying. Ral picked exactly 200 of the strongest. That afternoon, 220 Knoll hunters lined up. Ral stood at the front, raised his claw, showed his new fangs, and said one sentence: "Dragon Lord above. Loyalty, 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 loyalty." They roared back, and the column marched toward headquarters. Back at base, Ral spread his hunters along the western forest paths in staggered defense lines. Small beast groups get killed on the spot. Large herds get harassed and pulled into ambush zones. He positioned himself at the very front, between the first and second lines. A Knoll chief never leads from safety. A level 7 raging forest elephant smashed through the trees, a full size bigger than normal, tusks dragging torn vines, eyes blank and chaotic, heading straight for headquarters. Ral waved his scouts back and walked toward it alone. The elephant charged, tusks aimed at his chest. At 5 paces, Ral sidestepped and raked his right claw upward across the inner thigh, one of the few unarmored spots on the beast. The skin split cleanly. Blood sprayed, soaking half his body. The elephant's front leg buckled. Before it could turn its head for another strike, Ral was already on its back. Rear claws dug into the thick skin folds for grip. He raised both front claws and drove them into the gap between skull and spine. One strike. The elephant crashed down, flattening a patch of flowers. His scouts stared. They'd seen Ral hunt before, but a level 7 forest elephant usually took a whole team hours to grind down. Ral just killed one in moments. He jumped off and looked at his claws. Blood still dripping. A faint dark gold sheen along the edges of his nails. He licked one claw tip and shook the blood from his fur. Before today, breaking through that kind of thick hide was the hardest part of any hunt. Fangs left shallow dents. Claws made scratches at best. You'd need a spear through the eye or throat for a real kill. Today his claws went through elephant skin like it wasn't there. The dragon blood inside him was making everything sharper and hungrier. His appetite had exploded lately, rivaling an ogre's. He washed his face in the stream and looked at his reflection again. Fangs even longer than this morning. The line from ear to jaw sharper, more defined. He didn't look like a Knoll anymore. More like a werewolf. Strength rising. Reflexes faster. Even healing had sped up. A hit from the elephant's ear had bruised his left shoulder during the fight. By the time he checked it at the stream, the pain was completely gone. He stood and looked toward headquarters. He didn't understand magical theory, didn't know about abundance paths or power overflow or ancestral awakening. But one thing he was absolutely certain of: everything good happening to him was because of the day he chose to drop his weapons and follow me. He'd made plenty of wrong decisions in his life. That one was right. A scout ran back with news. Hundreds of goblins spotted 5 miles west, mixed in with more beasts, numbers still growing. Ral cleared his mind and signaled his hunters. Full combat formation, head-on engagement. 200 Knolls rose silently from the forest shadows, spears gripped tight, fangs bared, eyes glowing faint green in the dim forest light. Ral charged first. Somewhere on his skin, beneath the fur, where vine scratches had healed, a faint green shimmer pulsed once and vanished. He didn't notice. He wasn't worried about goblins, a few hundred green runts. He could handle them alone even if they doubled. But Buck's warning echoed in his mind. If my transformation kept going long enough, it wouldn't just attract goblins and elephants. The truly terrifying things in the deep forest, the ones even ogres won't approach, would eventually come too. He didn't know when that day would arrive. He just knew that until it did, he needed to kill more beasts and push the defense line further out. And in the deepest part of the forest, something was already stirring. A tree so massive that 100 Knolls couldn't wrap their arms around, it was slowly changing shape. Its trunk was hollow inside. In the darkness of that hollow, a pair of green dragon eyes was opening. Something that had been hidden in the deep forest for a very long time had finally been awakened by my leaking power. A new competition was about to begin. There was another green dragon in Sunset Forest. His name was Ethers, and he'd been hiding in the core region for a very long time. He was 12 meters long, dark green scales perfect for blending into dense forest, a green dragon on the edge of adulthood. His lair was a massive hollow ancient tree, so huge that 100 gnolls couldn't wrap their arms around it. From outside, just a tree. Inside, a fortress packed with gold coins, gems, magic item fragments, and the skull of an ogre warlord. Years ago, that ogre warlord, level 16, master rank, had ruled the forest core with an army of ogres, goblins, bear goblins, and a snake people tribe he'd conquered by force. When Ethers was still a young dragon, the warlord hadn't taken him seriously. A young green dragon, not even master rank. What threat could he pose? The warlord was wrong. Ethers secretly turned the snake people before the fight. Their leader, Emma, level 13, armed with a nerve toxin-coated spear that kills anything below master rank in 10 breaths, hit the ogre army from behind while Ethers attacked from the front. The warlord died without ever realizing his own subjects had been turned against him. Ethers kept his promise. The snake people got their freedom and territory in exchange for becoming his core vassals. Now he had 6 snake commanders above level 10, thousands of snake warriors, plus himself, a green dragon about to break into master rank. An absolute regional power. But he'd never expanded outward. Not one step. That was what made him smarter than most dragons. He'd watched other powerful monster tribes get destroyed by neighboring nations forming alliances against them. He'd even seen an iron dragon fall to a dozen master rank fighters working together. He knew that the moment he pushed beyond the deep forest, surrounding kingdoms would come for him. 5 or 6 masters would be enough to kill him in his current stage. So he stayed hidden, quiet, building strength, ordering his snake people to never venture past the mid-forest. Patient as only a green dragon can be, waiting until he reached legendary before revealing himself to the world. Then my power reached him. Over a month ago, the abundance leaking from my sleeping body seeped through the deep earth and entered his magical senses. Warm, growing, perfectly aligned with a green dragon's natural affinity for plants, and carrying a faint edge of danger. He tried to ignore it, forced himself to stay calm, but the scent got stronger every day. It kept him awake, disrupted his sleep, gnawed at him constantly. Today he finally gave in. His eyes opened in the dark hollow, and they were full of greed. He was convinced, if he could find the source and devour it, he could break through to legendary. Nothing in his entire bloodline memory, thousands of years of dragon knowledge, described anything this perfectly suited to green dragon evolution. 20 years, maybe 30 at most. Legendary rank, the threshold that most dragons never cross in their entire lives. Once that thought took root, he couldn't push it back down. But his survival instincts, the same caution that had kept him alive all these years, held him back from charging out blindly. Emma, come here. The snake woman leader appeared within minutes. Lower body a serpent's tail covered in dark green scales, upper body humanoid with smooth skin above the waist. Her poisoned spear never left her side. You're awake, master, she said, voice carrying that distinctive serpentine allure. Do you smell it? Emma closed her eyes, extended her senses. After a moment she opened them, puzzled. No, master. I sense nothing unusual. So only I can feel it, Ethers murmured. It doesn't belong to the abyss, or the elemental planes, or any known divine system. It's something I've never encountered before, and it fits green dragon power perfectly. If I consume its source, I can break through to legendary. He paused. Find it. I don't care how many scouts you send or what methods you use. Find the source. Then his caution kicked in. But I'm warning you. No matter what you see, no matter how weak it looks, do not attack. Do not disturb anyone. Do not reveal our position. Find it. Map everything. The source, its location, guards, surrounding forces, every detail, and report back. We've survived this long because we never expose ourselves. This time is no different. Emma bowed and slipped out silently. She went straight to her camp and summoned all 6 snake commanders. She repeated Ethers' orders word for word. The 6 departed in 6 different directions, snake scouts spreading outward from the deep forest core through the mid-layer toward the outer edge, fast, silent, precise as a well-tuned machine. Meanwhile, on the outer forest's western defense line, Ral was crouching behind a fallen tree, cleaning blood from his fangs after repelling a second wave of beasts. His left shoulder was still numb from a stone-armored python's tail strike. He had no idea that deep in the forest, a green dragon far older than me had turned his hungry gaze toward my territory. He had no idea that Snake People scouts were already moving silently in his direction. He just wiped his claws clean, stood up, and signaled his hunters, "Get ready, next wave incoming." GRA arrived at the western front with 300 half-elf rangers, just as Ral's hunters were running out of steam. Less than half of Ral's 200 were still standing. The rest wounded, bandaging themselves against tree roots with torn strips of hide. GRA took one look at the carnage and the exhausted hunters. "We're late." Ral wiped blood off his claws with a scrap of fur. "You're here? That's enough. The waves are getting bigger. Level 10s are starting to show up." He pointed at the corpse of a stone-armored python the size of a forest elephant. Head pierced through, but it had crushed several gnolls before dying. "I'll take over from here," GRA said. They didn't need a strategy meeting. Both knew exactly where to stand. GRA flew overhead, covering the whole battlefield with her eyes. Ral stayed at the very front, shoulder to shoulder with his strongest fighters, about a dozen mutated gnolls who'd come through the transformation with regeneration abilities rivaling ogres. Their wounds stopped bleeding in seconds. Broken bones healed in half a day. The price was monstrous hunger. They ate several times more than normal gnolls. Dead beasts from the battlefield went to them first. In return, they took the most dangerous job, absorbing the first charge of every wave with their own bodies. The two races fit together perfectly. Half-elf archers and vine controllers provided ranged fire and crowd control from behind. Gnoll hunters held the front line and delivered killing blows up close. Arrows sealed escape routes. Vines locked down movement. Fangs finished the job. Against level 5 beasts and below, the archers handled almost everything alone. Against level 6 through 9, the plant-wielding half-elves trapped beasts with vines and tree soldiers while gnolls flanked and tore them apart. Level 10 and above, Ral and GRA dealt with personally. A level 10 black-scaled python burst from the trees. Ral bit through its neck scales from the front, while GRA put a sword arrow through its skull from above. A level 11 ground-splitting bear smashed through the vine wall. GRA used her dragon wings to blast wind in its face, and when it reared up roaring, Ral tore open its belly from below. Quick, clean, barely a scratch on either of them. Wave after wave broke against the defense line. Corpses piled into hills, forest elephants and armored boars at the bottom, pythons and unknown beasts in the middle, goblins and small creatures on top. Blood hadn't dried on one layer before the next wave climbed over it and got pinned down by arrows, becoming the next layer. By the time Ral killed the last beast of the day, the sky was dark. He stood on the corpse hill, covered in blood, mostly not his own, every wound slowly closing. From a distance, he looked like a statue standing on a mountain of the dead, only his chest moving. GRA sat on a fallen tree, wiping her sword. 300 rangers scattered across the line, mending bowstrings, counting arrows, resting against roots. Gnoll hunters carved edible meat from the corpse piles. A forest elephant leg would feed them for days. Then both Ral and GRA stopped talking at the same instant and turned toward the same direction, the western shadows beyond the defense line. GRA's fingers slid silently to her sword hilt. Ral's eyes locked onto one spot. "You felt it too," GRA said. Ral stared into the shadows for a long time, then pulled his gaze back. "Probably just a small rat. Let the wounded rest first. We take turns on night watch." He walked a few steps toward the line, stopped among the corpses, and looked back at those shadows one more time. Deep in those shadows, a snake-person commander named 8 was silently withdrawing into the darkness. His scales matched the bark perfectly, breathing suppressed to near zero, heartbeat slowed beyond human detection. One of Emma's 6 commanders above level 10, he'd personally crept to the core of the Gnoll defense line to observe everything. He'd seen it all. The mutated Gnoll's regeneration, Ral tearing apart a forest elephant barehanded, the half-elves controlling plants. Every detail recorded in his memory, ready to carry back to his master in the deep forest. Once he reached a safe distance with no pursuit, he turned and slithered through the fallen leaves without a sound, racing toward the forest's deepest core. Neither Ral nor GRA knew that in those depths, a green dragon far older than me, One who'd been hiding for years, quietly building power, waiting for his moment, had already sent his scouts to find the source of my leaking power. They didn't know the snake people were watching. They only knew that tonight, despite the temporary quiet, sleep wouldn't come easy. The snake person Commander 8 made it back to the forest core by dawn. He went straight to Emma's tent and reported everything he'd seen at our western defense line. Gnolls with ogre-level healing, half-elves controlling plants and creating tree soldiers, two races fighting side by side with military precision, layered defense strategies against different threat levels. Nothing like a ragtag monster mob, more like a trained civilized army. Emma's tail tightened as she listened. She'd led the snake people for years, fought ogres, competed with beasts for territory, watched forest powers rise and fall. But she'd never heard of gnolls and half-elves cooperating, and gnolls with regeneration like ogres was completely unheard of. Combined with the mysterious power only her dragon master could sense drifting from the west, the pieces fit together. She brought 8 to the dragon's lair, the hollow ancient tree. He'd never been inside before. In all the years since the snake people became vassals, only Emma had permission to enter. Emma held up a small green scale, given to her by ethers during her dragon blood conversion years ago, and the magical barrier parted to let them through. Inside was more than a tree hollow. Dragon tongue runes covered every surface, thin streams of green magic flowing between them. The skull of the level 16 ogre warlord floated at the center, slowly rotating, sending magic pulses through the rune network with each turn. A crude but functional magic fortress, able to block attacks below master rank, shield against external detection, and prevent anything without a dragon blood mark from entering. This was why no beast or rival power had ever found the core area. Ethers hadn't just been cautious, he'd built himself a citadel. Ethers lay coiled on his gold pile in the deepest part of the lair. 12 meters of dark green dragon. His eyes opened and fixed on the trembling snake commander behind Emma. "Who did you bring in?" Emma knelt. "This is Commander 8. He just returned from the outer edge with intelligence that matches what you described. I believe you should hear it directly." Ethers studied 8 from head to tail. "Speak." 8 couldn't move. His tail curled involuntarily, heart hammering. He'd glimpsed Ethers from a distance years ago. Being pinned by those eyes at close range was completely different. Emma touched his tail tip gently with hers. Encouragement. He took a breath and started talking. Once the first sentence came out, the rest poured out. Every detail, no additions, no embellishments. The mutated gnolls' healing speed, the half-elves' plant magic, the coordinated tactics, the defense line structure. He wasn't there to analyze. Analysis was the dragon's job. Silence filled the lair for a long time after he finished. Ethers slowly stood up from his gold pile. 12 meters of dragon unfolding in the confined space. Wings half opening, then closing. His pupils burned with raw greed. Gnolls with ogre-level regeneration. Half-elves controlling plants. A multi-race coalition that never existed in this forest before, appearing right where that power is coming from. He stared down at 8. When those gnolls healed quickly, was there anything else? 8 blinked. Yes. Every time they regenerated, they were muttering something under their breath. Ethers' tail slammed the ground. Gold coins scattered everywhere. The greed in his eyes nearly erupted. His body dropped low, wings half spread, ready to launch from the lair. A deep dragon growl shook the rune-covered walls, making every symbol flash at once. 8 flinched backward. Even Emma's fingers tightened involuntarily. Then the impulse was crushed. Years of survival discipline forced it down. Wings folded back. He coiled onto his gold again. The greed didn't disappear, but decades of caution held it in check. He was a green dragon who'd hidden in the wilderness for years without being discovered or hunted. If that power was what he thought it was, rushing in would be the stupidest possible move. He'd waited this long. A few more days wouldn't matter. He turned to Emma, voice calm again. "Pull back every scout. Then mobilize the army. Push the mid-forest medium tribes westward. Don't tell them why. Just let them know there's something in the west worth fighting for. Let them charge in on their own." His tail pointed toward the outer edge. "Let them test that tribe's strength for us. Whether they get wiped out or break through, either result tells us how deep the other side's hand goes." Emma bowed. "Understood. I'll arrange it immediately." The barrier sealed behind them. locking ethers and his burning eyes back inside layers of runes and gold. The mid-forest tribes had no idea their fates had just been written onto a chessboard by something far stronger than any of them. They were about to become expendable probes, thrown at my tribe to measure what we could handle. And at the other end of that chessboard, Rao was crouching at the base of a corpse pile, sharpening his claws, completely unaware of the trouble heading his way. Emma moved fast after leaving the dragon lair. She gathered all 6 snake commanders, repeated Ethers' orders exactly, and within half an hour 3,000 snake warriors were formed up and marching into the mid-forest. Their mission: drive the mid-layer tribes westward, straight toward my territory, and use them as disposable probes to test my tribe's strength. The first target was the Blood Axe tribe. Their leader Hort was a level 11 Gnoll warlord with over 1,000 fighters. He'd been comfortable in his territory for years, paying tribute to the snake people and keeping his head down. He was examining a captured iron axe when the alarm went up. He ran to the fence and froze. He'd seen snake person hunting parties before, a dozen, maybe a few dozen. This was an army. 3,000 snake warriors in tight formation, spear tips gleaming, 6 commanders lined up at the front. Emma sat on a raised platform carried by 4 soldiers, poisoned spear in hand. She didn't even look at him. Hort tried to negotiate. We've stayed on our land, paid every tribute on time, never crossed into your territory. If you want more tribute, we can talk. Emma's answer was simple. Leave. Go west. I don't want to see your campfires by nightfall. When Hort opened his mouth to object, Emma flicked a glance at 2 of her commanders. They hit him simultaneously, 1 strike each to the chest. He flew backward through his own fence and crashed into a rock pile. 2 level 10 commanders against an unprepared level 11 Gnoll. No contest. You don't get to negotiate with me. Leave by dark, or next time I won't just kick you out. Hort spat blood, lowered his head, and squeezed out 1 word: retreat. His people scrambled into their caves, grabbed everything they could carry, and headed west. Hort walked at the back, didn't look behind him once. The second target was the gray-skinned goblin tribe. Over 3,000 goblins, twice the Blood Axe numbers, but far weaker fighters. Their chief was a skinny level 10 goblin with a staff taller than himself. He took 1 look at the snake army and ran out to kneel on the roadside, screaming, "We'll go. We'll leave on our own. No need for trouble." Then he shrieked at his goblins to run. 3,000 goblins poured westward in total chaos. The last was Deep Forge, a dwarven settlement of 800, built around an abandoned ancient dwarf mine. Their chief was a level 12 warrior with a gray-white beard and a cracked ruby in his helmet. They'd been mining and forging weapons here for decades. The 2 dwarves my tribe had taken in years ago, the ones who'd brought us from Stone Age to Iron Age, had escaped from this very mine before being enslaved and sold to the Jaya Principality. The dwarf chief stood on his stone wall, watching the snake army approach. He said nothing for a long time. He'd done business with snake people before, traded dwarf-forged spears for their potions. Now those same snake people stood outside his walls with 3,000 soldiers. He knew this day would come. From the moment Ethers killed the ogre warlord and the snake people took over the core zone, the dwarves' days in this forest were numbered. He turned to his people. Pack up. The forge is too heavy. Leave it. Take the anvil, tools, weapons, and food. The dwarves didn't panic like goblins or rage like gnolls. They packed silently and efficiently, tools on carts, weapons on backs, or in furnace left behind. The chief was the last to leave. He looked back at the mine they'd worked for decades, then turned west without another word. 3 mid-forest tribes, driven from their homes in under 3 days, all heading the same direction, west. They had nowhere else to go. North was the human principality. South was the dwarf kingdom. East led toward elven territory. West was the only road open, and west was exactly where my tribe's defense lines stood. The Blood Axe Gnolls led the march, Hort swallowing his fury. The gray-skinned goblins scattered across the middle, their chief counting heads while running. The deep-forged dwarves brought up the rear, heavy steps, some cursing about settling old and new debts, most just silent. 3 tribes that used to fight each other over scraps were now on the same road, pushed by the same force, heading toward the same destination. Behind them, 3,000 snake warriors reformed their lines. Emma stood at the front, looking west through the canopy. She didn't need to follow or monitor them. She knew they'd go west. They had no choice. And at the western defense line, Rao was crouching by a campfire, flipping a slab of boar ribs over the flames. He had no idea that 3 separate forces, each bigger and more organized than anything he'd faced so far, were being herded straight toward him. Grease dripped onto the fire and popped. He thought the wind felt a bit stronger than usual tonight. He didn't think much of it.